The year 2035, our era, was the year when the demon gods descended to Earth. Between the Earth and the world of the gods opened a spatial corridor, and then using this opportunity, the gods descended to the Earth, the existence of which they had long forgotten. They wreaked havoc and discord throughout the world. The gods were filled with rage. 7 years after the arrival of the gods, the country of D was completely destroyed. The people could do nothing against the gods. 9 years later, country N was wiped off the face of the earth. 15 years later, the great iron wall of Dacia collapsed. The gods spared no one. It was a real massacre. The entire army was destroyed. It would seem that the world is doomed and humanity will be destroyed. However, there are still heroes. Only one hero refused to give up, despite the gravity of the situation. Even though he's alone, he's not going to give up and still wants to protect Earth because he has to do it at all costs. The gods are on the remnants of the great iron wall of Dacia. Therefore, Ying-che decided that he would not allow anyone, neither gods nor demons, to pass through. Blinding the gods, he rushed into his final battle that will finally lead him to his death. And suddenly, everything went dark. And then he opened his eyes abruptly, and he looked very young somehow. He raised his head and looked. There was a window next to Ying-che from which bright sunlight fell into the room. There was a table next to his bed. On the table, in addition to books and a charger, there was a picture frame with a picture of his little sister. After looking around and realizing where he was, he still couldn't figure out how he ended up in his room when he should be dead by now. His phone showed that it was now 6 hours 50 minutes a.m., and the alarm clock rang. Today was Friday, May 4th. Staring at his phone and clutching his head, the guy had no way of realizing what had actually happened to him. For a moment, he was visited by one very stupid thing. He jumped out of bed and ran to the window to check his ridiculous guess. When he reached the window and opened the curtain, through the window he saw the blue, peaceful sky above his head, which he had not been able to see for a long time. He was in complete shock. He had gone back in time, even before the gods had arrived, and started exterminating people. Suddenly, there was an alert from the 9 Heavens system that the activation was successful. The guy didn't realize what the sound had just occurred, and the system started loading and had already advanced to 50%. After another second, the system announced that the download was complete. Ying-che was still in shock and didn't understand what was happening. Meanwhile, as if out of nowhere, some circuits appeared. The flight of the birds suddenly seemed to slow down, and a feather that looked like an angel wing feather appeared. An amazing place he had never seen before appeared in front of the guy, for it was the Southern Heavens Gate. However, when he read the name of the gate, he began to guess that this place was the heavenly palace of the gods. And it turns out that after returning in time, he somehow miraculously got into the heavenly palace. He remembered that Western gods and demons had arrived on Earth, but no one from Eastern mythology had ever appeared. After seeing all those huge statues and the place where he found himself, Ying-che decided that this place held the secrets of the Eastern gods. Suddenly, rays flew from the eyes of one of the celestial statues towards the guy. It was as if there was an explosion around him. The guy grabbed his head, which was receiving a gigantic amount of information. It even seemed to him that his head could not withstand and would explode from such a flow of information. He was being torn apart, and all he could do was wriggle in pain. Meanwhile, the 9 Heavens system started the carrier recognition program, and in the same instant, the guy's body was entangled with countless tissues like a mummy. After that, the system began to restore the host's body. The system started to change the level of strength, then to change the level of endurance, and then to change the level of survivability. Finally, all the ribbons entangling the guy's body were torn off, and he revealed himself to the world. And the 9 Heavens system successfully confirmed the host. His eyes shone with frightening energy, and his entire body radiated unprecedented strength and power. Ying-che even laughed. He had returned thanks to the 9 Heavens system. His body was filled to the brim with newfound strength. These 9 heavens corresponded to 9 levels, each of which hid the power of an ancient god. He slammed his fist on one of the walls. As long as he could enter the gates corresponding to his level, he would be able to receive the power of the deities. Amazing power had been granted to him. To open all the gates, he would have to defeat all the demons and gods while taking their power. Even though he still couldn't fully understand how this system worked, but with the 9 Heavens system, he would at least be prepared for the impending arrival of all these gods. This time, he would have the power to protect everyone, and he wouldn't let them destroy humanity. He was overflowing with enthusiasm and determination. At that moment, the door to the boys' room opened, and a little girl appeared from behind it. Still sleepy, the little girl rubbed her eyes and told her brother that she was hungry. She asked her brother what they were having for breakfast. It was his little sister, Ying Bao Bao, who was in Yangling Junior High School in Class 2, in her 3rd year. The guy couldn't hide his surprise at seeing her, for their last meeting turned out to be Ying Bao Bao's last. The poor brother watched as his sister was impaled with his hand by one of the arriving gods. He couldn't protect her, but only pitifully watched from the sidelines as she died. Ying Bao Bao even asked him to escape, but he stubbornly refused. And his sister died in his arms. He apologized to his sister for not being able to save her last time. However, Ying Che swears that this time he will not allow either gods or demons to even touch his sister. Completely forgetting his manners, he rushed to his sister and hugged her. Ying Bao Bao didn't even realize what had happened, that he was suddenly acting like this. The brother is all furious, telling his sister that nothing happened, and he just remembered something sad. However, he swears to himself again that this time he will make sure that the disaster does not happen. His sister seems to realize everything about her brother at once. She realized that he wanted to skip school and could have just told her so. A short time later, the headquarters of the Central Intelligence Agency received a call from an unknown person. The commander was informed that there was an incoming call on line 1. The commander was surprised that there was someone on line 1 calling. He was immediately worried because it was a secure channel, so maybe there was an urgent order from the government. However, a subordinate reported that the caller was coming from the city number of one of the residential areas. Of course, the caller was the protagonist, who at that moment his sister told him that she was going to school, and his brother could stay home today. Army Commander Chang Huchin introduced himself and then demanded that the caller give his name and rank. The kid immediately began by greeting General Chang and also informed him that they were still strangers. However, despite the fact that they are strangers, he asks them to take his words seriously and believe him. He informs that what he tells is worth sending a convoy after him. This seemed to have convinced General Chang, as a short time later, helicopters flew out and the car was also dispatched, and the search began on a large scale. One of the subordinates obtained a pass. At the checkpoint, the agent apologized for such a late visit, but he had notified the necessary people and was granted permission. The guy's neighbors watched as the military arrived right in their yard. The girl even called her mom over to see how many soldiers showed up in their yard. The mother was frightened by such news and immediately ran to the window. She thought that the neighbors had something happened, and what a serious atmosphere is here. Around the military began to gather residents of the nearest houses and tried to find out what was going on in their yard. They were wondering if someone had committed a crime, and Ying Che appeared and asked to be let through. None of the neighbors understood who was in front of them, or if the military had really come for this guy. Some people even thought the guy was a criminal. However, other people parried that by saying that if he was a criminal, he would have escaped long ago. Finally, the chief of all these military men asked the guy if he was Ying Che, and if so, the commander was expecting him. Ying Che confirms with a serious look that it is him, and that from now on, every minute counts, so they need to hurry up. The agent asks the guy to take a seat in the car, and the local girls marvel at the fact of how handsome the guy is. The girls literally fell in love with him, their eyes shining like that. They called the guy a find and a treasure. They didn't even know that there was such a handsome guy living nearby all this time. After getting into the car, Ying Che immediately began to think about what to tell them first. After all, he had so much information. Underground cities, the Great Iron Wall, the army of gods. He has a lot to go on. Fortunately, he was not alone on the battlefield at that time. Therefore, all along the way, he carefully wrote down the information he needed in his notebook. General Chang Huchin at this time also didn't waste any time. He demanded to find all the information about Ying Che. Afterward, he briefly listened to the report. Ying Che is 17 years old, grew up in an orphanage, and currently lives with his sister, Ying Bao Bao. According to the report, Ying Che leads a very normal life, with no hints of mental disorders, and has no ties to crime. When General Chang Huchin hears this, he realizes that Ying Che is not an ordinary guy, because he somehow found out about the development of strategic atomic weapons. Wang Zifan finds only one explanation for this, and that is that there was a leak of classified data. General Chang Huchin considers this to be an extremely serious crime, but he doesn't think it's that simple. So he does not want to jump to conclusions and orders that the investigation be continued. Yingzhe sat down on the sofa and looked out the window, and sparks flew. After all, soon the peaceful sky would not be visible from this window, but only fire, destruction, and loss of life would be seen. The guy was distracted from these terrible thoughts by General Chang, who arrived in the office and greeted Ying Che. Putting the file on Ying Che on the desk, General Chang Huchen asked the guy to sit down and informed him that he had 5 minutes. The general demanded that he first answer how Ying Che got his number. Ying Che parried that not only does he know General Chang's number, he also knows many military secrets that are not available to ordinary citizens. Ying Che warns the general that he knows that in the future, a terrible crisis will befall the country and the world. No amount of military force can prevent this crisis. General Chang Huchen is skeptical, but Ying Che understands that this is hard to believe, and he wouldn't believe it himself. Ying Che comes straight to the point and says that the country's enemies will not be humans, but gods and demons from another reality. They will break through the boundary of reality, get to Earth, and destroy mankind. General Chang Huchen is still as skeptical as anyone else in his position. He immediately stops the guy, and if Ying Che came to the general to tell tales, then let him leave his office immediately and not waste his time. However, Ying Che has no choice, and he has to get support from the military. Therefore, he informs him that after the invasion of the gods, there will be a horrible massacre that will result in over 5 billion people being killed. Only after all the defeats, all the peoples of the world will unite for victory, but it will be too late. General Chang Huchen still doesn't understand why he should believe some guy. To make a convincing argument and to be believed, he informs him that in a few days there will be a big fire in the eastern part of the city, better known as the Jiangzhou 5/8 incident. If countermeasures are taken, about 200 lives can be saved. In addition, Ying Che took out a notebook from his backpack and handed it to the general, then asked him to send people to the specified place and that they would find evidence of the existence of gods there. In the evening, Ying Che arrived home as if nothing had happened, and he wasn't even detained. Is it because he is 17 years old and underage? His sister was already waiting for her brother at home. While eating chips, she wondered to Ying Che where he was going and why he was gone for so long. She was displeased that she almost starved to death. Ying Che apologizes to his sister. He just had a lot of things to do today, but he had time to stop by the market. He asked his sister to wait a little while he cooked dinner, and he himself was covered in cold sweat. He still couldn't believe everything that had happened to him, so he almost forgot that his sister was waiting for him at home. While preparing dinner, Ying Che was thinking about the fact that the first divine apparition was about 2 months away. If he wanted to protect his sister, he needed to prepare properly. His soup turned out to be quite rich, by the way, and looked appetizing. The system hadn't shown up once since it was activated last time. To open the heaven's gate, the guy would need the power of the demon gods. Killing them in his current position was simply impossible. And without the sword of the god of war, Ying Che is just an ordinary person with knowledge of martial arts. Hence, it seemed like it was time to head over there. The next day, when it was still early morning, he went to his little sister's room. Ying Baobao seemed to be dreaming about how her brother kept feeding her, since she had already said in her dream that she was full and didn't want any more. The silly brother left a note for his little sister, saying that he had to leave on business, that he had arranged with Aunt Zhang, who lives next door, for the aunt to let Ying Baobao come to see her. Ying Che asks that his sister not to worry about him, and that he will return home soon. After a while, Ying Che arrives at the excavation site, which has a sign saying that no outsiders are allowed to enter. However, despite the warnings and fence tapes, Ying Che enters the secret site. The guard who watches over the place, passing by with a flashlight, it seemed that someone was here, but Ying Che has already disappeared from his gaze. Using the flashlight on his phone, Ying Che began to inspect the excavation site. Surprisingly, he got lucky very quickly, as he found what he was looking for, the remains of a demonic god. In his past life, he had accidentally stumbled upon this place, already during the disaster that befell the earth. It was in this pile of bones that he had gained recognition of the sword of the god of war, which allowed him to fight back. Suddenly, the system gave an alert that the presence of demonic energy was detected. Turning around, the guy saw something that shocked him. The system informed him that according to legend, the monster that appeared before him was a beautiful girl who had merged with a poisonous spider during her lifetime, turning into a terrifying banshee spider. An F-level banshee is a crossbreed spider. Ying Qi was extremely unhappy with this information. He didn't understand where the spider had come from. After all, the gods hadn't arrived in this world yet. There was no time to think about it, as the spider creeper attacked and was about to finish the guy off. However, during this attack, Ying Qi managed to grab one of the spider's limbs. Ying Qi seized the moment to counterattack and yanked the limb with force, thus ripping it off. While the spider was screaming in pain, Ying Qi didn't wait for it to regain consciousness and used this torn limb to attack the spider. The skin of this thing is so tough that even the bones of a god can't pierce through it. So he decided to strike at the spider's eye. Ying Qi wanted to find the war god's sword as soon as possible. After hitting the eye, the spider lady let out a deafening howl. Ying Qi asked her not to scream as there were guards present at the secret facility. And he was right, because the people heard someone's voice and realized that an intruder had entered the secret facility. One of them immediately called the headquarters. He reported that an intruder had entered the archaeological site, and then he requested reinforcements from headquarters. Ying Qi, on the other hand, was not having any luck at all at this time. He could be enveloped in a web at any second, and he only managed to dodge it by some miracle. In his previous life, there was no spider in this place. However, the spider was increasingly driving him into a corner, and in this cramped place, there was not enough room for maneuvering. So in another attack of the spider, he blocked with the limb that was still in his hand. As soon as one of the webs sent in his direction met the demonic bone in his hand, Ying Qi learned even sadder news. It turns out that webs even corrode demonic bones. While he was scrutinizing the demonic bone in his hand, the spider woman had already rushed towards him once again. It easily threw Ying Qi into the air and he flew quite high. The landing was quite hard. He fell after hitting a pile of bones. Ying Qi complained that the banshee in front of him was only an F-level banshee before. All he would have needed was one, and he would have been done with her. And now that he had gone back in time, it was as if he had fallen from princes straight into the mud. What a shame for him. But then a sword came into view, which was sticking out of one of the skulls and shining as if to call for him to take it. The system reported that it was a sword without a master. In front of him lay a weapon that had once belonged to the god of war. With the death of the god of war, the weapon lost its master and was sealed away. Despite this, the sword continues to exude demonic energy, infecting everything in the neighborhood, exposing living organisms to the divine foulness. The monster attacks the guy again to finally finish him off. However, the monster fails to do so. Ying Qi manages to dodge, and the impact from the monster only causes a cloud of dust. Jumping out of the dust cloud with his sword, Ying Qi is already excited because now it's his turn to attack the stinky spider. Touching the blade with his hand, Ying Qi commands the sword to recognize him as its master. Suddenly the blade glowed, its energy overflowing and enveloping it. This seemed strange to Ying Qi because he didn't remember the last time the blade had such a violent reaction to its new owner. Suddenly he was in some strange place, and the blade suddenly vaporized right out of his hand. But then from behind him, he heard a voice that said that he had been waiting for Ying Qi for so long. Ying Qi turned around to see who had called him. A stranger of enormous size holding a sword informed him that he was the remnant of the war god's power, his last will. This was all strange to Ying Qi. What does the last will of the god of war mean? There was no such thing last time. The man reported that he didn't have much strength left. If Ying Qi had delayed a little longer and appeared later, the god of war would have finally dissipated. It turned out that in Ying Qi's past life, the moment he found the war god blade was already too late. The spider had undergone sword corruption and turned into a monster. It was no surprise to him then that he didn't encounter the spider here last time. The man showed what the god of war was able to accomplish after a lifetime of training. The god of war had not only studied martial skills or enlightenment, but also a much deeper understanding of the path of martial arts. And the last will of the god of war channeled all this knowledge into a guy. The god of war asks Ying Qi to study hard to master the sword of the god of war. Then Ying Qi will not only be invincible on the battlefield, but will also be able to advance further in learning this art. After returning to reality and stepping on the ground, he realized everything. After returning to this world, Ying Qi did not just obtain a sword, but also inherited the path of the god of war's martial arts. This is even much more interesting for him than last time. As the war god's last will disappeared, Ying Qi asked the war god not to worry, for he was not going to shame the war god. The spider beast attacks Ying Qi again, but this time he is already prepared in the monster's attack. He uses 8 sword techniques and chops up the spider beast, landing epically. The system reported that the banshee spider was defeated, and as a reward, Ying-che receives 1 characteristic point. For killing the demonic entity, Ying-che would receive a corresponding characteristic point, which he could then spend on enhancing his own body's performance until he reached the level of a martial arts god. The system also asked Ying-che to choose the characteristic he wanted to improve. Looking at the system window, Ying-che notices that the system still has more perks. It turns out that for 1 kill, he gets 1 characteristic point. After thinking for a while about what to choose, Ying-che decided to increase agility. The system reported that the dexterity characteristic had been increased. The system also congratulated Ying-che on his first kill and absorbing the demonic power. At this moment, Ying-che was at the first level of the 9 heaven system, Zhongtian, and his progress was 10%. The system said that when the progress reached 100%, Ying-che would be able to enter the Zhongtian level, gaining the power of the Eastern gods. Cultivating at the Zhongtian level would increase Ying-che's strength level and speed up the transformation into a god. From all of this, Ying-che realized the most important thing: it would be possible to speed up the training. The system still did not calm down and reported that the remnants of the scattered war god's power were found in the air. The blood and bones of the spider god, as well as the demon god, would be used as a repository to reunite its powers and then transform. The transformation was successful, and the system congratulated the host and reported that he had obtained an egg. Would a Pokemon emerge from the egg and Ying-che become a Pokemon trainer? Soon men with flashlights arrived at the scene of the battle. They immediately noticed that something was missing. One of the men immediately radioed headquarters. He made a report to headquarters that the intruder had escaped by stealing the remains in an unexplored area. After a closer look deep inside the cave, the man repeated his report that the bones had been stolen from an unexplored area. There was a small spider left at the site, by the way. At this time, Ying-che was running at full speed, carrying an egg under his arm. He was glad that he was lucky to have improved his agility. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to escape. However, Ying-che was interested in the most important question: what was inside the egg he had gotten? His sister that night was greatly surprised. Her eyes even twinkled as her brother brought out a huge egg. She even thought of her brother making an omelette. That was what made her eyes twinkle. Meanwhile, at the coordinates that Ying-che had indicated, May 8, 2035, 19 hours and 21 minutes, East China Sea. Coordinates, 27 degrees north latitude, 125 degrees east longitude. A giant-sized skull was fished out of the water with chains. A subordinate informed Prof. Chiang Ming-qiang that the sea was raging heavily and asked him to return to his room. He asked that the professor take care of himself and not catch a cold. After all, the most important thing was the professor's health. However, the professor didn't even listen to him. He was incredibly shocked. Could it be that everything he had been told before was true? That same night at the headquarters of the Central Intelligence Agency, Wang Zifan reports that the reconnaissance team has found a skull. It is over 60 meters long, and the diameter of the skull alone is as much as 8 meters. In addition, it is composed of many unknown materials. It is stronger than anything currently known. Chang Huchen himself took a look at the report and even concluded that it was a true deity. At the same instant, a subordinate came to the commander with an urgent report. Information has been received that a fire has broken out in the eastern part of the city at this moment. Thanks to the fact that the firefighters' help was provided in time, the fire was able to be extinguished quickly. There was no news of casualties, meaning there were no injuries. Chang Huchen inquired about the cause of the fire. The subordinate said that a team of experts had already been sent to the epicenter of the explosion for further investigation. However, based on the available evidence, they speculate that it was a meteorite impact. Wang Zifan no longer understood anything about what a meteorite fall meant. She was shocked after all. It doesn't rule out that very possibility. Chang Huchen wonders if everything is exactly like this, and there were no errors. The subordinate responded by reiterating what he had previously said. Soon, Ying-che saw a news report on the television. The news anchor reported that a massive fire broke out in the eastern part of Guangzhou City, and that thanks to the timely help of the firefighters, it was quickly brought under control and extinguished. Thanks to this, it was possible to avoid casualties. The anchor also said that the cause of the fire remains unknown and that an investigation is underway. Ying Baobao was already asleep while hugging the giant egg. Yingche pondered on the fact that it looked like he would actually be able to change the past. After all, unlike his past life, there were no casualties at all in this incident. This fire didn't end up taking any lives. The fire did not become a horrible tragedy, but instead it became a mere cause for conversation. Financially, however, someone has suffered. The news anchor reported what's next on the news. 2 days ago, a Tang Dynasty archaeological site was robbed. The intruder who sneaked in during the night took away some unexplored bone remains. Who could it be? Sister was sleeping peacefully at this time and remembered the egg, thinking it was an ostrich egg. It was only now that the guy finally noticed that his sister had long since fallen asleep. After that, his phone got a call from an unknown number. The guy immediately realized that it was Commander Chang Huchen, and when he answered the call, he immediately said hello to him. Chang Huchen called the guy to show him what they had fished out of the depths, a giant skull. The unknown skull has continued to be studied by many scientists. Sitting at the table with a cup of hot coffee, Chang Huchen asked if this skull was the skull of the god that Ying Che was talking about. The guy confirms the commander's words. He reports that it is the skull of a 6-winged S-rank angel, and that the proof that all his words are true. Wang Zifan saw the guy for the first time. She was surprised that this is the man who predicted the fire in the eastern part of the city and gave the coordinates where the skull of the unknown creature was fished out. He is so young, so she couldn't think that he could possess such data. Yingche wonders what Chang Huchen will now say to all his words. After all, they managed to save more than 200 lives in this fire thanks to Yingche's information, and in the future, their cooperation could save more than 5 billion people. In his own thoughts, he noted that no matter who he was, but after such evidence, no one would be able to doubt his words. Chang Huchen is no fool, so after another careful glance at the report, he orders the entire army to pass on the order. Chang Huchen orders the entire central military district to immediately start preparing for war. He is personally going to report this to headquarters. Wang Zifan is overly surprised by this turn of events. She notes that even with everything the guy told them, the god's invasion is too strange a reason. She notes that they can't do that. However, a man suddenly approached, stopping the girl's further words. He asks the girl to do what the commander tells her to do, and the man will take care of the rest. After all, it was about the safety of the people, so one could not be too careful in this matter. This man was Grand Marshal Daxia, Jiang Zhengguo. The man immediately approached the guy and inquired if the guy was Ying Qi. He asked Ying Qi for information. The guy was surprised to see the Grand Marshal. Chang Huchen asked what the Grand Marshal was doing here. However, Jiang Zhengguo wondered why Chang Huchen said that the skull in front of them belonged to a god. Ying Qi confirms his earlier words. He also notes that it is their enemy. Ying Chen notes that because of such gods, millions of people will die, and the rivers and mountains of Daxia will be colored red. They will subjugate the people of all countries of the world, break their wills and take their souls. From what people will become the walking dead, only able to sing to the gods. After 15 years, the entire humanity will be completely destroyed. Shang Zhengu wondered that since they had found their skeletons, did it mean that these creatures could be killed? And moreover, since they found the remains, it means that these creatures have already been killed on Earth. Yingche agrees with this assumption. He points out that, for example, this S-rank 6-winged angel was destroyed by Hou Yi 5,000 years ago and fell into the Eastern Sea. Chang Huchen, hearing a familiar name, asked the guy, "Is he talking about Hou Yi, the hero of a famous myth?" He wondered if it was not a myth at all. Yingche confirms the commander's words. After all, most of the myths are just because of the invasion of gods in the past. However, Yingqi notes that there was one particular myth out of all these myths. This myth told that in ancient times, the heavenly gods invaded this world, but were driven out by the eastern gods. The heavenly gods used the faith of the enslaved races as a source of their power. However, the eastern gods were different. After all, they achieved their power through grueling training that perfected their bodies. They themselves had reached the pinnacle and performed great deeds. It was only because of this difference that the eastern gods were able to become true gods. This story caused Chang Huchen to ask a question. After all, since the eastern gods had come to the aid of humans last time, should we rely on them now, and would they be able to come to the defense of humanity this time? Yingche did not hesitate to answer. He immediately informed that during the time of the Great Ancient War, Most of the Eastern gods had died in battle, and the ones that remained had eventually turned into mere myths and legends that no one saw anymore. His past life, they too had hoped for the return and help of the Eastern gods. However, unfortunately, none of the Eastern gods ever came, so in the end, the entire Earth was destroyed. No one managed to hide or escape. But there was also something that Ying Che would not tell. After all, mankind has the palace of the 9 heavens. Only Ying Che hadn't even managed to open the first gate yet. He needed to prioritize properly and find everything that could help in the war as early as possible. Summarizing his story, Ying Che says that this time they will have to rely only on themselves and not on the help of the Oriental gods. Chang Huchen accepts the challenge of fate. He didn't even think that he would have the opportunity to fight the real gods. Ying Che, meanwhile, took out a map from his backpack. After that, he opened the map and spread it out on the table. After pointing out a spot on the map, Ying Che said that in less than 2 months, Poseidon the sea god would arrive in their world. After that, Poseidon would begin commanding the sea monsters, directing them to fight on the west coast of the America and the eastern Daxia Sea. This war will unfold over the entire Pacific Ocean. Xiong Jingge wonders to the guy, what would be the best thing to do in this situation? Ying Che is not the least bit embarrassed by these questions, because he didn't just come to shout about how everything and everyone is gone and cause decadence. Ying Che informs him that in order to protect the people of Daxia, they should use the time they have to create a line of defense, which will be called the Steel Great Wall. After a while, Ying Che and the others went to the sea. The only thing he could think about was why he chose such a stupid name for such an important conversation. Chang Huchen put his hand on the guy's shoulder and informed him that he had taken care of the school's suspension. Ying Che thanked the commander. Chang Huchen slightly wondered why the guy was so sad. After all, the construction of the Steel Great Wall had already started. In his heart, the guy was only thinking about not letting anyone call this wall that. He even thought that he had only said such a thing because he had recently been reborn, and that was the only reason why such nonsense was coming out of his mouth. Ying Baobao still walked around with a huge egg. She even managed to build a sandcastle. The sister wanted to show her brother her sandcastle. Chang Huchen pointed out that Ying Che has a cute sister. Chang Huchen reminds that it is the brother's responsibility to protect his sister, so the commander wonders what the guy's next move is. Ying Che agrees with this. He points out that the Steel Great Wall is their shield that will protect the entire Chinese nation. However, the enemy cannot be defeated just by having a shield. Ying Che notes that they need weapons to resist the gods, and for that, they need talented people, as well as the strength to resist. Chang Huchen doesn't see this as a problem. They're willing to do whatever is necessary and support the guy with everything he needs. Except the only thing he didn't understand from Ying Che's words, it's what kind of power he has in mind that will help them resist. Then Ying Che tells of the last gift that the Eastern gods have left as a legacy to the humans, something that will become their sword, capable of defeating the gods. While the bird was carrying away the crab, a subordinate suddenly ran out and shouted to the commander that they were in trouble. Chang Huchen wondered why his subordinate was in such a panic and what had happened. Ying Baobao ran up to her brother and grabbed his hand. She was having so much fun. Ying Che asked his sister if she was tired. He didn't expect that his sister was really having fun. He only brought her to this place because she overheard his call on the phone and refused to stay at home. The joyful brother patted his sister on the head and informed his joyful sister that they would be home soon. However, upon hearing the subordinate's report, Chang Huchen was greatly surprised. The commander informed Ying Che that bad news had happened, and Ying Che would not be able to leave this place. As it turned out, a meteorite had struck one of the cities. The team that went to the site to inspect the meteorite impact wore protective suits. When they arrived at the site, they didn't understand why there was no meteorite itself at the site of the meteorite fall. Suddenly, they noticed something, and after their shouting, communication was cut off. The liaison tried to re-establish communication, but all was to no avail. The man had absolutely no idea why the connection was suddenly lost. It was too strange. Soon, Ying Che, bringing the giant egg with him, arrived at the meteorite crash site. The terrain was astonishing in its horror. The police had already managed to fence off the site of the meteorite impact, so outsiders were not allowed in. A man immediately drew his weapon when Ying Che approached the fencing police tape. Ying Che immediately pulled out his pass and informed the man that he was a special agent of Ying Che. He had been sent to investigate the cause of the fire. As soon as the man looked at the document and heard what Ying Che had informed him, he immediately holstered his weapon. After that, the man lifted the yellow police tape, giving Ying Che the opportunity to pass underneath it. And Ying Che inquired if there was any news from the expert group. The man reported that there was no news. He also said that on the night of the accident, the expert team had entered the epicenter area of the explosion and disappeared, and that there is still no news from them. The police and military have since closed off access to the area so that no outsiders would accidentally enter. Ying Che inquired whether it was the meteorite. However, the man pointed out that it was all about the meteor crater. In addition, the expert group had mentioned a monster in their last report. Ying Che even had to ask about the monster, and the man confirmed that after yelling about the monster, communication with the group was lost. Ying Che decides to take a look at the crater. The man even offers to guide him. However, Ying Che refuses and states that he already knows where the crater is. As the man looked at Ying Che as he left, he thought that he was a strange guy who was carrying an egg around with him. Soon, Ying Che arrived at the meteorite impact site. He began to carefully examine the crater. Ying Che remembered the man's words about the monster. The shape of the crater was similar to the impact from the meteorite fall. However, Ying Che did not like the strange odor. Looking at the piece of supposed meteorite, he reached out and grabbed it. It had particles of something on it. Suddenly, the system reported that it had detected a reaction of divine demonic energy. In his past life, the fire that suddenly started had caused a lot of damage. Back then, everyone was busy dealing with the aftermath of the disaster, and no one had even considered that the real cause of the meteorite fall that had occurred was deeper. The disaster seems to have been covered up by interested parties over time. This is the conclusion the guy came to after inspecting the meteorite fall. Suddenly, a giant egg jumped out of his bag. Ying Che didn't expect this at all. Who would expect an egg to suddenly start jumping? The guy didn't think that the egg could jump, and so after coming to his senses, he ran to catch the fleeing egg. Soon, the egg led the guy to a particular part of town. After that, the giant egg stopped on a bridge. The panting Ying Che was somehow able to keep up with the fleeing egg. He even hurled threats towards the egg as he tried to catch his breath. His sweat-covered and tired face spoke for itself. There was no way Ying Che could expect that at this time. Even eggs ran faster than a human. He reached the egg, grabbed it, and loaded it back into the bag. After that, he wrapped ropes around the egg, claiming that now the egg would definitely not be able to escape. Ying Che even complains that if the system didn't show that the egg was about to hatch, he wouldn't have stolen the egg from his sister. However, as it turned out, the egg led Ying Che to this place specifically for a reason, as Ying Che saw a part of the city engulfed in flames. The people in this place were doing their best to restrain the monster. However, the chains had already burned and could not contain the monster. One of the men even told the man in charge to be informed about this. Immediately after saying that, the monster finally broke the chains. The entire area around it turned out to be engulfed in flames. The people here did not spare their lives. Despite the danger, they stood to the last man. They wanted to prevent the monster from passing through at all costs. This monster was a flame skeleton, rank F+. It playfully sent 3 fire attacks towards the people who blocked its path. The girl managed to dodge the attack at the very last second. The guy with the sword, with great difficulty, was able to shatter the fireball. The girl asked if he was okay. The man didn't try to be a hero and told her that he was having a hard time, and that if things continued like this, they would all be burned alive. The red-haired girl with the sword immediately told all those who were afraid to retreat. The rest of us she asked to help her carry on for another half hour. The whole head of the family would be arriving soon. As she spoke, her defenses weakened and she didn't notice the fireball that was about to burn her. As if out of nowhere, a mysterious guy with a giant egg appears. As if enveloped by lightning, he drew his sword from its sheath. At the same moment, the guy rushed towards the girl on the fly, shattering all the fireballs that were launched at the people who were defending the city from the monster. The red-haired girl even closed her eyes from such scalding and bright flames. Ying Che, in a pathos pose, covered the girl from the scalding flames, turning to face her and putting his back to the fire. The girl had already had time to say goodbye to life, but she was saved. The flame skeleton was quite powerful for her. Ying Che urges the girl and the others behind, as he would deal with the monster himself. Without thinking long, Ying-che rushed towards the monster, even though the red-haired girl told him not to do so, as he might be burned by the monster's flames. The flame skeleton was incredibly fast and managed to release flames from its mouth, which flew towards the guy. At the same second, Ying-che tossed the giant egg upwards and used the 8th strike of the destroyer blade, thus shattering the flames that were directed towards him and the flame skeleton. Ying-che easily landed behind the flame skeleton and caught the previously tossed egg. And like a true tough guy, he didn't look at the explosion behind his back. He even honored the fact that he was a tough guy today, as well as always. The system immediately displayed a notification congratulating Ying-che for defeating the flame skeleton. As a result, Ying-che earned 1 characteristic point. The system immediately started absorbing divine demonic power. Ying-che didn't understand what absorbing power meant. Suddenly, a field of symbols appeared around him, and energy began to flow and gather in the center of it. All this divine demonic power gathered and merged into a single red stone. The system immediately reported the change. 9 heavens, the first heaven is Zhongtian. Opening progress, 20%. The smoke cleared, and the other people could finally notice that the guy was standing there alone, and the monster was gone. The man was glad that they were saved after all, and wouldn't die now. The red-haired girl was greatly surprised. The guy in front of her had destroyed the flame skeleton with a single blow. She wondered who this guy was. Ying-che is a simple guy who carries justice. Therefore, he stood in a victorious pose with his egg raised up and his sword on his shoulder, waiting for her applause. Something resembling a core fell out of the flame skeleton. Ying-che immediately took the stone in his hand. The red-haired girl in a hurry told the guy not to touch the rock with his hands, but the guy reported that he had already done so. After the battle, the girl sealed the stone and Ying-che, along with the red-haired girl, went to the gazebo to talk. The girl informed that her name was Li Xiaolu and that she was from Jinzhou. She is the 37th heir of the Li family's martial arts school. The guy was surprised to hear something like this, since he had never heard of them. Xiaolu didn't particularly like the guy's reaction. The Li family from Jinzhou is one of the oldest and most revered families of martial artists in Dazia. Even though much time had passed since the family's seclusion, the family's name was to remain on the rumor mill. That was why the girl did not expect that the guy had never heard of the Li family. Despite all this, Xiaolu thanks the guy for helping them deal with the monster. If it wasn't for the guy's help, everyone would have died. So she tries to find out how they can thank the guy. She promises that she'll fulfill everything except for crimes like violence, robbery, or something like that, and getting married. It's only at this point that she decides to inquire about the guy's name. All glowing after saying that, the guy informs that his name is Ying-che, since Xiaolu had previously told him not to touch that shining stone, which means the girl knows what that thing is. Therefore, Ying-che asks to be told about what this thing is. He even admits that he doesn't want to hide anything, and he is interested in the thing. Xiaolu is not really happy with the guy's choice. Just because he's interested, the girl suddenly has to take and reveal the secret of the magic crystal. That's something she didn't want to do. The guy reads the information and realizes that it's a magic crystal. Xiaolu informs him that the crystal should not be touched, because it contains some kind of mystical energy. If contact is prolonged, it can lead to unpleasant consequences. And did the guy really think she'd just tell him? Although the guy noticed that she had already told him everything. Xiaolu went on to say that no one knows about this thing except them. Moreover, the crystal can cause mutations in living beings. The appearance of the monster that the guy destroyed was caused by this dark energy. Ying-che waited with an interested face for the continuation of this story. Looking at the guy perplexed, the girl began to realize what she had just done. She grabbed her head with her hands and realized with horror that she had just blurted out valuable information to a stranger. Ying-che seemed like a strong guy to her. She wasn't even sure if the guy was their friend or enemy, and she had already blabbed out all the information. She blamed herself for not even bothering to find out who was in front of her to begin with. Ying-che recalls that the secret of the magic crystal used to be considered a state secret, and it was Chen Lao who first discovered the magic crystal. Due to research problems, the case was covered up and the details were never revealed. Suddenly, the descendants of an obscure family turn out to know the secret. Xiaolu finally came to her senses, and with a serious face and tone, she asked why the guy appeared in this place. The guy was surprised by this question because it was Xiaolu who brought him to this place, saying that it was uncomfortable to talk there. The girl continues her questioning and corrects the guy's words. After all, she wonders why then at the very last moment, when they no longer had hope, he appeared. Then Ying-che tells her that he saw something burning, so he went to see what was there, and there they were fighting. The girl moved even closer to the guy and immediately clarified that she was asking about who he really was. Ying-che is not hiding here either, and immediately said that he is a special agent sent to this place to investigate the fire. That's why he is here. Xiaolu is surprised to hear about the investigation. He even inquired what was wrong with it. Xiaolu's face was covered in cold sweat, and she was about to say something incoherent. However, at this moment, they were interrupted. Another man appeared, who turned out to be Xiaolu's brother. He was surprised that they had a special agent visiting, and he wasn't even notified. The sister greeted him like a brother with consternation. But the man asked that the girl call him patriarch, when they are not alone together. The girl immediately corrected her mistake. This man turned out to be the patriarch of the Li family, the ancient martial art masters, Li Yunfei. The man immediately admitted that Xiaolu wanted to say that the fire was actually their fault. Xiaolu did not expect such a confession from the patriarch. However, Yunfei informed that they should not hide anything in the presence of a special agent. The patriarch, smiling good-naturedly, noticed that Ying-che had already guessed that Flaming Skeleton was the cause of this fire. That monster was originally a human, but had become infected thanks to the mystical energy associated with the crystal and the ancient artifact. It was after that this human became a monster. Ying-che noticed that they were talking about that mystical energy, and that perhaps it was a divine demonic energy. He remembered that cancer-like creature that was also affected by that energy. If the fire was really caused by the monster, then Ying-che feared that the expert team was definitely not going to survive. Ying-che wondered what kind of ancient artifact caused such a thing. Yunfei did not hide anything this time either, and revealed that this artifact was considered forbidden and had been guarded by martial arts families since ancient times. Over the centuries, this artifact had been passed between families for safekeeping. But Yunfei could not reveal the details to the guy. However, he did reveal that prolonged contact with the artifact leads to contamination. He even mentioned that recently, the infection period was getting shorter and shorter. After hearing the information, Ying-che thought that perhaps this was due to the approaching phenomenon called the God is nearing. Li Yunfei even shared that traditionally, the artifact keeper is changed once a month to avoid contamination. But on the night of May 8th, something strange happened. Although there was still time before the deadline, the keeper was infected and turned into a monster. The newly turned monster was weak but fast. The patriarch was able to contain it, but the monster managed to escape. The man didn't expect the monster to weaken so quickly and fall from a height and thus cause a fire. After catching the monster, Yunfei stepped back for a while. He had no idea that his brief absence would almost turn into another disaster. Ying-che understood what the patriarch wanted to convey to him. However, the guy asked to take a look at the artifact. The patriarch denied the request, because the artifact cannot be shown to anyone. However, the patriarch said that if the guy wanted to learn more, he didn't need to look for anything new, since he already had the artifact. Ying-che was even surprised when the man brought it up. Li Yunfei then clarified that he was talking about the guy's sword. At these words, Ying-che tensed up and became serious, for this was a serious statement. Since the patriarch talked about the sword so confidently, it means that someone in this world had already learned the secret of the gods long before they descended. Xiaolu is surprised that the sword in the guy's possession is also an artifact. Li Yunfei informs that once the sword recognizes the master, then its energy stops emanating. Therefore, the patriarch understands why no one noticed it. This sword was not that simple. However, Ying-che tries to change the subject and tells us that this sword is a family heirloom. Daxia certainly had family heirlooms, but the guy found this sword recently. Ying-che immediately tries to leave, stating that it's getting dark, and it's time for him to leave, and he has to take the crystal for investigation. The patriarch is fine with the guy taking the crystal. With a strained smile, Yunfei asks the guy to be careful not to turn into a monster. Leaving this strange place, Ying-che notes that this so-called martial arts master family was not as simple as they wanted to appear. Therefore, Ying-che was later going to send people to check on them. After seeing to it that the guy left their territory, Xiaolu returned to the house and activated the secret mechanism by pulling the book. Once inside the hidden place, Xiaolu reports that Ying Che has already left their territory. Li Yunfei is not stupid either and sensed everything at once. Now that the monster is dead, then this matter was over. Therefore, the patriarch commanded that Xiaolu ask everyone to pack up and prepare to leave. He realized that this place was no longer safe since they had exposed themselves, and now they needed a change of location. Late in the afternoon, Ying Che arrived home. He took his sister's diary, in which she described that today was May 10th. The sister wrote in the diary that lately she didn't understand what her brother was doing at all. First, her brother dropped out of school, then he went to the army, she stopped seeing him at home, and last night he stole an egg and left with it. The sister was furious with all this. Finding his sister asleep, he noticed that his sister had fallen asleep while writing a diary entry. Ying Che disappointedly tells his sleeping sister that when the deity appears, he won't always be there to protect her. He wishes his sister could find some artifact like his sword, so his sister could stand up for herself. While his sister was sleeping, she had some strange dream. In the center of her dream was a book that was most likely an artifact from the patriarch's family. Sister didn't realize what kind of book it was. I wonder what kind of power Ying Che's sister possessed. The guy himself went to watch TV, in which for some regular drama, in which the guy wondered if the girl could love him more. Ying Che didn't really listen to what was on TV, he was thinking about today. He was sure that someone in this world already knew the secret of the gods. As he looked at his sword, he pondered on what the Li family was hiding. He remembered the patriarch's words that if a guy wanted to know more, he didn't need to look for anything new, because he already had the artifact. While the third guy came on TV already and asked for the girl's love, the sister woke up. She was wiping her sleepy eyes. Ying Che asks her why she woke up and if it was because of the volume of the TV. However, the sister denies it because it's about something else. The girl wonders where the egg that her brother stole is. The brother immediately reveals that the egg is fine and shows it off. At that moment, he noticed something strange. The crystal suddenly shrank. The guy couldn't believe it. At the same second, his sister called her brother a little frightened, because as it turned out, the egg had hatched. The brother was surprised by this, and at that moment someone fell out of the hands of the surprised sister holding the giant egg. From that moment on, a week passed. All that week, the military and scientists had been working to secure the country. Huge columns were made. A subordinate ran up to the commander and asked permission to report. 100,701 huge steel pins were installed. Chang Huchen was happy to hear such news, but they needed to speed up the pace of work. The subordinate understood the given order. The creature that hatched from the egg was very picky about food and wouldn't eat anything but magic crystals. It was finally reported that the Steel Great Wall Coastal Defense Project had made significant progress. The subordinate reports that according to the conceptual design proposed by Comrade Ying Che, construction has now begun on 720 key areas on the coastal line, and given the current pace, they expected the final phase of construction to be completed in at least 50 days. Ying Che ran his hand across his forehead from the fact that he was like an idiot calling the project by such a horrible name as Steel Great Wall. 20,000 kilometers long, 300 meters high at sea level, and 500 meters wide at the base, the steel barrier will abut the coast and cover all the sea frontiers. Chang Huchen is as surprised as anyone else. After all, this miracle project will take just over 50 days from design to construction. He thought it was something incredible. A subordinate notes that Ying Che's Steel Great Wall blueprint was highly praised even by the director of the Academy of Sciences. They considered the guy to be a true genius. However, Ying Che notes that the blueprint is just a paper version, but the realization of the project depends on the hard work of the builders. Ying Che was not a modest guy, but he actually saw the blueprint in his past life, so it wasn't even his idea. In the most difficult times of Ying Che's past life, the scientists led by Chiang Min-kiang stood up for humanity. Under the threat of riots and disasters, they had completed the steel wall project in 7 sleepless nights. In the end, he was just someone who handed over this project from the future and accidentally changed the name of the wall. However, not everyone was happy with what was happening. One man felt that something had been overlooked. This was the official Han Sanjin. He believed that if concrete was left out, steel alone would require 100 billion tons, which was almost 10 years of the country's production. If their enemy was a sea deity, then he suggested completely abandoning the coastal areas and completely shortening the defense line. Commander Chang Huchen did not tolerate such remarks, and in one easy move, he knocked out the official's teeth. The official didn't understand why he was being treated like this. After all, he had only suggested an idea. Chang Huchen put a weapon to the official's forehead and informed him that the enemy should not get a single piece of their land. If they confront the sea deity, they will lose the coastal lands. Then what should they do next? The commander tells the official to get out of his sight before he is fed lead. Yingche tries to defuse the situation and asks the commander not to get so heated. A subordinate reports that the resources the commander asked to find for Yingche have been found. They can take Yingche with them for inspection. The subordinate even gives Yingche a light elbow strike with his elbow, hinting that they need to leave. Yingche also confirms that he wants to check things out. In his thoughts, he only notes that it is not for nothing that the commander spent many years on the battlefields defending Daxia. When the commander was angry, his aura was quite frightening. Hearing all this, Chang Huchen returned the weapon to its holster and reported that the official was lucky this time. However, he did not wish to hear such words from the official again. The official's subordinate tried to help him, however. The official asked him not to touch him. The official looked in the wake of the departing commander, his subordinates, and the young man. The subordinate noted that the commander had done a great job of finding all the right people. The official doesn't understand how Daxia's future could be entrusted to some youngster. He thinks it's delusional. After all, if it is a deity, the official panicked that they don't even stand a chance against the deity. After that, the official became angry. He immediately told his subordinate that he agreed to meet with those who claimed to be able to contact deities and asked for his meeting. Later, they moved into the building again. Wang Zifan caught up with them and told them that the place Yingche had asked them to check out appeared empty when they arrived there. The patriarch seemed to have already escaped. When they searched the place, they only found some kind of emblem. Furthermore, Wang Zifan notices that the family the guy talked about doesn't exist. In Jingzhou, there is only an ordinary martial arts school belonging to the Li family. Yingche picks up what he found and wonders if there is anything else. Chang Huchen immediately notices that this family is trying to hide something, so he orders that the investigation should continue. So leisurely pacing and carrying on a conversation, they found themselves in the room where the projector was located. The people there were looking at an interesting recording of Yingche engaging in a fight. When Yingche and the others entered the room, the remote control girl at the projector immediately noticed that the busiest person had showed up. Chang Huchen tells Yingche that they have invited 5 people, including masters of Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. Next, he suggests that Yingche figure it all out for himself. The guy agrees to this. One of the invited guests immediately notices Yingche and wonders if Yingche would dare to fight him. The man is sure that Yingche is just a puppet who looks convincing in front of the camera, but in reality he is nothing. This was a representative of the Shudao school of Taoism. Yingche realizes that in order to convince the other masters, he must try his best in battle. Therefore, he decides to put his new pet on the floor and suggests to save time that everyone attack it at once. Here was the Mo clan's heir, Mo Xiaoxiao. The heir to the Xingyi clan was Shangguan Guozi. There was also a representative of the Buddhism school, Wen Bei. And last was the representative of the Confucianism school, Mo Mo. All of them smirked because this guy was just an upstart who should be taught a lesson. However, after only 15 minutes, all the invited guests were already lying on the ground. Yingche wondered to the invited guests if they would listen to him now. Shudao immediately pointed out that noble people persuade with words, not with their fist. After all, they live in a civilized society. Yingche asked whether the commander had explained all the details to them. Mo Xiaoxiao confirmed, but she still found it hard to believe. She is overly shocked by the fact that they were gathered to fight deities. Momo notes that the guy is saying some pretty interesting things. After all, if the deities really did appear, what can they do? After all, they are also ordinary mortals who will become cannon fodder in no time. Yingche jokes to the invited guests that they are not even cannon fodder with their current strength. To begin with, it was necessary for them to become stronger in order to become Daxia's backbone. Wen Bei claimed that they were still too weak, so they were asking their mentor to show them the way to the truth. The battle with the deities was near, and Yingche had also made his preparations for this battle. Although the Eastern gods remained in legends, they had passed down a valuable legacy to them. After that, Ying Che removed the cloth covering the hidden underneath, and a shining object appeared in front of the guests. Wen Bei was too shocked when he saw the item that was delivered. The subordinate said that it took too much work and a lot of signing to persuade the museum to lend this item. The man even wondered what the item had to do with the gods. This item was the homeless tripod. This artifact was an auxiliary tool used by the ancient Dacia deities. After the ancient gods died, the nine-turned Qiankun tripod lost its master, becoming a homeless tripod. However, somehow Ying Che touched the artifact. Then the homeless tripod instantly reacted and flew upwards, recognizing Ying Che as its owner. Ying Che explains to everyone that the nine-turned Qiankun tripod is in front of them, and that it is an artifact left behind by the deities. He asks the others to look at the patterns of the artifact. This artifact awakens their own feelings and understanding in everyone. Mo Xiaoxiao was immediately surprised, for she noticed that she actually felt something. At the same moment, all the guests who had arrived by invitation sat down on the floor and began to meditate. Even the subordinate who had arrived folded his hands in prayer and closed his eyes. Ying Che was greatly surprised that even the subordinate commander suddenly started practicing. Ying Che didn't stand there for a long time and just observe. Instead, like the other people who were here, he crouched down on the floor, folded his hands and started meditating next to the artifact. I wonder what kind of progress all these masters will make after coming into contact with such an ancient artifact. I'm also wondering where the so-called Li family went, and also which Pokemon hatched from the egg. In the evening, Momo and Shangguan Guozi sparred after meditating for a while. Momo felt himself being filled with tremendous strength. Shangguan Guozi only pointed out that it was not necessary to use only brute force and counterattacked Momo. Mo Xiaoxiao informs the others that it can control 1,000 transformations. The thing can take any shape at the girl's will. She even gives the shape of the thing's heart. Wen Bei seems to be impatient and asks for the girl to beat him. He asks the girl to do so because he feels that his body has become incredibly strong at the moment. Xu Dao also gained unprecedented power and used the great heavenly dragon power. Everything around the guy flew into the air. The realization of how the power within him felt now came to him. Momo once again asks to fight another 200. His opponent even thought that Momo was trying to scare him. The commander's subordinate runs up to the guy and informs him that everyone else behaves like this after waking up. Ying Che understands, because after receiving the signature techniques from the artifact, everyone is feeling a little excited. The commander's subordinate wonders how the guy knew that tripod has such amazing properties. The commander's subordinate even noticed himself that he felt his physical abilities improved. He wondered if the other artifacts from the museum could create something similar. He was even willing to take these artifacts from the museum. However, Ying Che notices that probably not everyone is capable of such a thing. The commander's subordinate had most likely said his assumption in jest, but he was now surprised when his assumption turned out to be partially correct. In Ying Che's past life, the nine-turned Qiankun tripod stood behind a display case in a museum for a long time without anyone knowing its purpose. Only when the War of the Gods broke out, those who learned of what the nine-turned Qiankun tripod could do immediately handed it over to the state to strengthen the combat power of the special god fighter squad. The commander's subordinate looked at the guy with astonishment. He even thought that the guy in front of him was a reborn deity. It all seemed like some kind of dream to him. Ying Che noted that the nine-turned Qiankun tripod could not be returned to the museum yet. The War of the Gods was rapidly approaching. If they wanted to protect their land, they needed to train hard and improve. Ying Che asked for a man's help in this not easy task. Later, Ying Che was going to talk to the commander to make the training harder for everyone, because right now they had no chance of winning against the real gods. The commander's subordinate understood everything and was going to help the guy in everything. Ying Che managed to recall another important piece of information. There were 2 more artifacts in the world that would help increase strength and speed up the refinement process besides the nine-turned Qiankun tripod. One of these artifacts was the Chaos Pearl from Vientiane. The location of the pearl was unknown at the moment. The pearl was constantly changing hands, and each time its appearance was accompanied by bloody carnage. The second artifact was the yin-yang mirror from Kunlun. The mirror had been hiding amongst the Kunlun mountains all this time. In the guy's past life, after the destruction of the Kunlun Mountains by the deities, there was a landslide and the hidden ruins of Kunlun were discovered. However, even now, even though the lad knew where the mirror was, it was impossible to find it and take it away. In the evening of the same day, the sister was still as if in a trance and saw a glowing book in front of her. She reached for the book, but suddenly the brother called his sister by name. It turned out that the girl could have fallen off the table, but her brother caught her in time. The brother reminded the girl that it was not allowed and that it was dangerous. The sister complained that what was in front of her had disappeared again. The brother wondered what his sister was talking about. Bao Bao looks all around for the object and doesn't realize if it was all a dream. The sister tells him that she has been dreaming about a book lately. However, the foolish brother only remarks that his sister has a love for learning so much that she already sees books in her dreams. So he recommends that his sister start by eating. Turning on the TV, the brother and sister discover that the Sun Wukong movie is on again. The sister takes a burger and takes a bite, wondering what her brother has been up to lately, as she has noticed that her brother has been coming home late every day. Ying Che notes that he can't do otherwise, as the War of the Gods is about to begin. Suddenly, the movie was interrupted by breaking news. As the announcer reported, a government official was speaking at an urgent United Nations meeting. All the cameras were pointed at a man who was choosing the right words for such an announcement. A man on behalf of the state warned all the countries of the world that the earth was about to be taken over by the gods. People with great potential could comprehend the unity of all souls technique given by the 9-turned Chankun tripod. In the guy's past life, this ability was called the God Annihilation Technique. Ying Che did not get up from his seat and heard people nearby buying youtiao. Also, someone was buying a glass of soy milk. The God Annihilation power from the refinement of the technique circulated through his veins, strengthening his body. He was able to strengthen his senses. The guy could now hear sounds up to 1 kilometer away. He realized that if he continued to improve, he could not only improve his hearing and vision, but also become incredibly fast and strong, as well as create weapons. In addition to this, one could gain many other abilities. He needed to push his body and divine power to the limit until the moment when the descending of the gods began, so that he could surpass the gods and destroy them. Suddenly, he heard his sister calling him. Blood flowed from his ears, for his sister was too close to him as he focused all his attention on the sounds. Bao Bao came in to tell her brother that her aunt who sells fish had given her 2 tickets to the amusement park, and her sister wanted to go there for sure. The guy was surprised and disappointed in himself. Too focused on the sounds in the distance, he missed the sounds that were near him. The brother refused his sister's request as he needed to continue his training. The sister with burning eyes begged her brother to go along with her just this once. Under the pressure of his sister's shining eyes, the guy gave in after all and agreed to go with her and visit the rides. The sister was overjoyed that she had won and they would go to the rides. Ying Che asked his sister for the tickets to see where the amusement park was. Only now the sister saw that her brother was bleeding from his ears and was worried about her brother. Mo Xiaoxiao put on her normal clothes and was already waiting for her brother and sister outside the amusement park. She even notices that the guy is already late. Ying Che notes that he was late for a reason, as he had to borrow clothes from the commander. The guy looked as strange as possible in his new clothes and new look. He noticed that the ticket said that only parents could enter, so he called Mo Xiaoxiao to pretend to be Bao Bao's mom. Bao Bao is happy to see her new mom. Mo Xiaoxiao is puzzled that the guy seems to have absolutely no idea what parents should look like. At the same time, at the amusement park, someone is looking at the visitors. They notice people on the Ferris wheel with Spirit Energy 4 and Spirit Energy 6. Dressed in a frog costume, the stranger complains that he has not yet been able to find an object with Spirit Energy 10. His accomplice has also failed to locate anyone. Suddenly, the blue-tie frog spotted a family where the father had Spirit Energy 10, the mother had Spirit Energy 8, and the daughter had Spirit Energy 8. The frog with the blue band around his neck was immediately excited about his find. The frog was happy that it had found an object suitable to be sacrificed for a god. At this intense attention to him, the guy looked in the direction of the frog watching him. Mo Xiaoxiao noticed the changes in the guy's mood and reaction and became agitated, but the guy reassured her. Later, he asked Mo Xiaoxiao to look after Bao Bao while he was going to go to the restroom. After going to the restroom, the guy took out a pillow that simulated his big belly as he was incredibly hot. As soon as he stepped out of the restroom stall, a frog with a pink bandage around his neck immediately appeared in front of him. After making sure that the guy was really the one they wanted, the frog with the blue neckband attacked the guy with a stun gun. Ying Che immediately fell to the restroom floor, causing the frogs to bewilder him. While Bao Bao was drawing her brother in the sand with a stick, Mo Xiaoxiao received a message on her phone. After reading the message that was sent to her, the girl was incredibly surprised. The guy was reached by the chatter of the others about how their leader was able to make time, despite his busy schedule, to come. The unknown person guaranteed that this was no ordinary performance and that the executive would not regret coming today. The unknown man asked how much more time there was before the performance started. Then the man in the plague doctor's mask ordered the victim to be brought out for public viewing. The frogs understood the message and started rolling the guy out on a cart. Ying Che felt that the voices seemed suspiciously familiar to him. After that, the frogs escorted the guy out and sat him on a chair. Then, the man in the plague doctor mask announced to everyone present that he was starting the ritual of summoning a god. The plague doctor thrust his hand out and began to recite the invocation. That he saw the Lord sitting on a high throne, and that the Lord's robes were descending, covering the entire temple. Beside the Lord stood the seraphim, and each had 6 wings. That with 2 wings they covered their faces, with 2 their feet, and with 2 they flew, calling out to one another. Blood began to envelop the entire space around the guy. As a result of the call that the man with the plague doctor's mask made, a C-rank 2-winged seraphim appeared in front of the audience. Everyone present was shocked by the performance they saw, as the summoned creature appeared under the rays of light like a god. The rich people, who hid their faces under masks, were completely shocked, because they realized that God really exists. The plague doctor informs all the rich people that when a victim gives his life to the god, he can appear on earth. He informs that the more sacrifices, the longer the god can stay on earth. The official, who thinks no one recognized him, wonders if another god can be summoned. The plague doctor remarks that such a thing is possible, as no god compares to the one they worship. The official is incredibly excited because he thought he could summon the sea deity. After that, he hoped to offer the deity the most favorable terms and persuade it to abandon its attack on the blue planet. He had even already fantasized that his merits would then be outstanding and that he would be able to teach the insolent man a lesson. The 2-winged seraphim was about to take the sacrificed guy, but he refused to surrender to the monster's mercy for some reason. Ying Che was disappointed to notice that he was only facing a 2-winged seraphim, and he had expected that he had finally encountered something serious. He pulled out a huge sword and went to attack the 2-winged seraphim. The official was disappointed that once again the guy was in his way. He immediately decided to run away from this place. After all, they couldn't be allowed to be discovered. Meanwhile, Mo Xiaoxiao, together with Bao Bao, cycled to the geo position that Ying Che had indicated, and they had almost reached the place. Mo Xiaoxiao didn't understand why Ying Che had sent her this message so suddenly. At the same moment, an official in a car passed the girl on a bicycle. Ying Che didn't waste any time either. He used a sword technique on the monster, God-killing strike, and chopped the monster in front of him with lightning speed. The guy even complains that the monster in front of him was so weak. He notes for all the hooded heretics that their god is gone, and notes that the man with the plague doctor mask is next in line. However, the man threw off his robes, and in fact there was a monster lurking underneath the clothes all along. He became furious that the guy dared to interfere with him. He declared that he would massacre the guy right away. The other accomplices also took off their clothes, and they were all monsters. The monster who thought he was great used the angel spear ability to destroy the guy. However, Ying Che easily broke the spear launched at him and destroyed the monsters approaching him with lightning speed. Just at this time, Mo Xiaoxiao and Bao Bao arrived at the designated place on a bicycle. Suddenly, they noticed that Ying Che was carrying out the bodies of the monsters he had destroyed. The guy even inquired why they had come to this place. He then asked Mo Xiaoxiao to help him because the military should be arriving soon. Soon, the entire place was fenced off and the military wouldn't let anyone through. The people who were crowding around were wondering what had happened in such a place. They wondered if someone was using the abandoned theater as a secret place for gambling. However, they soon saw a cage that contained a monster that seemed to still be alive. Soon they arrived at the base, where the commander was already waiting for them. He asked if he heard correctly that the monsters he was seeing were originally human. Ying Che remarks that this is the case. Humans were originally exposed to divine or demonic energy. The guy reckoned that somewhere there is a secret organization that performs rituals to summon the gods. Chang Huchen tiredly remarks that it looks like the guy will have to work harder and harder. He even asked for the guy to get some equipment. The guy wondered what else the commander was up to, and the guy was brought the records of the God-Killer Army. On May 19th, the formation of the first unit of the Killer Gods Army began. Everyone was even given special badges. May 23rd was declared as the official day of the creation of the Killer Gods Army. All recruits were required to take a military oath. They swore to obey orders, remain loyal to their duties, and strictly abide by discipline. They swore to destroy the invading gods to protect the future of Daxia. On May 24th, Wang Zifan informed Ying Che that they had managed to find a clue about what he was looking for. Soon, the guide traveled to the right place. The old man complained that the place used to be a great tourist spot, but after the landslide that happened a few years ago, anyone who swims up to the center of the lake faces trouble. After punching a guy's ticket, he notices that even while standing in this place, he can always hear singing coming from the other side of the lake. The old man remarks that the locals say that the lake is cursed. The guy is perplexed and asks what cursed means. The old man only sadly remarks that it is cursed, and that despite this, nothing stops the tourists and they come to this place every year. Tourists travel thousands of kilometers away from home to see the cursed lake and hear the mysterious singing. After that, the old man asked the guy to get on the boat. Ying Che keeps wondering why the old man is letting him pass so easily if this place is so dangerous. However, the old man suddenly asks the guy not to be afraid. As his story is just a joke, he asks the guy to relax because as long as they don't approach the center of the lake, they'll be fine. The old man even hopes that the guy will enjoy the lake tour, though he said it with a rather scary look. The first thing the old man did was to go to the boat, while the guy was still standing on dry land. Just as suddenly, he felt that divine and demonic energy was detected. Ying Che realized that the curse seemed to be caused by water creatures corrupted by divine and demonic power. He remembered that Wang Zifan had mentioned that in recent years, many people who had visited this place had gone missing. She had even wondered back then if the guy was really willing to go to such a dangerous place. She pointed out that there were other places to explore and that they were much safer than the lake the guy wanted to go to. She even inquired if he wanted to look at the other options. The guy categorically rejected the offer. However, for the sake of safety, Wang Zifan insisted that they pick a guide for the guy. Thinking back to his conversation with Wang Zifan, the guy realized that coming to this lake was the right decision. In his past life, he had heard about this mysterious place. The stories said that the lake was filled with strange aquatic creatures. Unfortunately, by the time he found out about it, the monsters from the lake had already been destroyed. The man who destroyed the monsters in the lake received a treasure that led him to power. After the descent of the gods, this man became a formidable local power. The guy was well aware that the lake was polluted with divine and demonic energy that spawned monsters, and there were treasures hidden at the bottom of the lake. Ying Che even thought that perhaps this was where he could find a divine weapon for his sister. For his sister's sake, his brother was willing to take risks and even go to the dragon's lair. Looking at his phone, Ying Che was a little disappointed that he was unable to contact the guide Wang Zifan had told him about. However, he decided to forget about this matter for the time being and start exploring the surroundings of the lake himself. The men standing near the lake noticed the boat and began to complain that once again someone had decided to risk his life. The man remarked that every year there are people who do not believe in the curse, but every time such a daredevil enters the lake, his boat sinks. However, the man in the straw hat asks him not to talk nonsense, because boats no longer sail to the center of the lake. In addition, he noted that boats can now only be operated by lifeguards. Therefore, if people do not swim close to the center of the lake, they will be fine. However, at that very moment, the men noticed that the boat was heading straight toward the center of the lake. The second man also saw the boat drifting toward the center of the lake. The monster that had hatched from the egg suddenly stirred. The guy noticed that it had been a long time since he last fed his Pokémon with crystals. Suddenly, the lake stirred, and as if out of nowhere, a melody came from nowhere. Ying Che was only trying to realize if it was the song that had been rumored so much. At the same moment, a whirlpool formed on the lake, and the boat started heading towards the center of the lake. Ying Che couldn't even stand on his feet and fell down in the boat, while the old man was still standing firmly in the boat on two legs. Suddenly, the guy noticed a hand that reached out of the water and grabbed the edge of the boat. Ying Che asked the old man where they were going. At the same moment, the old man's appearance was removed, and a girl who was a disciple of the Eshan sect, her name was Zhou Luoxi, appeared in front of the guy. She stated that she was looking for the guy's death. Then, an F-rank mermaid lord appeared out of the water, setting up this whole raging maelstrom in the center of the lake. A huge number of arms appeared out of the water, like the hands of dead people, trying to drag the guy down to the bottom of the lake after them. Ying Che realized that there was too little space on the boat to effectively fight anyone, so he decided to pretend to be weak. However, at this very moment, some waves began to affect the guy's mind, and his consciousness seemed to be clouded. At the same moment, a mermaid appeared from the water and grabbed the guy's leg. Zhou Luoxi was happy that her plan worked, because mermaids can sing hypnotic songs that make the opponent lose consciousness. After that, mermaids usually dragged their victims into the water, turning them into new sea monsters. Zhou Luoxi was happy, and even mocked the guy because a weakling like him shouldn't even dream of getting into the ruins. The girl was going to quickly finish the guy off. However, all of this only caused the guy to smile, and he easily tossed aside both the mermaid that clung to his leg and the girl. Zhou Luoxi flew back into the arms of the other mermaid from this blow. The mermaid didn't waste any time and enclosed Zhou Luoxi in her arms as if trying to strangle her. Ying Che meanwhile easily chopped the mermaid that was previously clawing at his leg. The system immediately informed him that he had received 1 characteristic point for successfully killing the mermaid. The system also congratulated the guy because this was the first time he had gotten rid of a mermaid and had successfully absorbed divine and demonic energy as a result. As a result, in the 9 heavens system, his progress of opening the first heaven, Zhongtian, became 50%. Ying Che was happy that even such small monsters could bring him extra points. Zhou Luoxi was already on the verge of being strangled by the mermaid, and at the same moment she used her secret weapon, which resulted in her launching a terrifying sound. Even the Pokémon that was behind the guy hid deeper into his backpack as he couldn't stand that horrible sound. In the same instant, all the mermaids got away from the ship and escaped to the bottom of the lake, leaving Zhou Luoxi and Ying Che alone. This secret weapon should interest the guy, for in it could be hiding the salvation of mankind. Zhou Luoxi even started to praise the guy, that the guy had at least some skills instead of being completely useless. Ying Che wondered what kind of girl appeared before him and what she needed. The girl said that her name was Zhou Luoxi, and that Wang Zifan had already told him about her because she was the guide she would accompany him on his trip to the lake. Ying Che became furious that the girl was the designated guide, but why was she trying to kill him? The girl started making ridiculous excuses that she wasn't going to kill the guy. She was going to stop at the last moment, and that it was all to test the guy's resilience. Zhou Luoxi wanted to make sure that she could trust a guy with her life. Ying Che didn't really believe the girl's words. Then she made innocent eyes, informing him that you don't get to know someone better until you fight them. By the time the mermaids had already left, the girl as a guide was going to continue their journey. However, as soon as she said that, then by a strange coincidence, one of the mermaids jumped out from behind and tried to attack them, but the guy lightning fast pulled out a blade and chopped the mermaid. The system, as usual, reported again that he had received 1 characteristic point for destroying the mermaid. Zhou Luoxi was very surprised by the sudden appearance of the mermaid, for she absolutely did not expect the mermaid to attack her again. Ying Che decided to show who was boss by telling the girl that if she wanted to test him again, she would end up just like the mermaids that attacked them. The girl even thought the guy was so petty and vindictive. 20 minutes later, they arrived at the shore by boat. Zhou Luoxi said that a divine altar was hidden in this place. Many years ago, after a landslide, the altar was connected to the lake through an underwater cave. So after preparing her scuba gear and changing her clothes, she informed him that they needed to dive into the cave to reach the altar where the treasure was hidden. The guy was curious as to why the girl hadn't appropriated all the treasure for herself. The girl made no secret of it, explaining that with a helper like Ying Che, she would have a better chance of success. She wasn't stupid and understood perfectly well that going there alone was too dangerous. Besides, she believed that working as a team was much easier. After that, they dove into the water where the girl followed the plan. They chased the mermaids away, so it was calm and safe underwater. Then once they were to swim through the cave, there was to be an altar right behind it. After a while, they surfaced swimming to the altar. When they reached the altar, the guy immediately recognized it. It was the Nua altar. Nua, also read Nugua, is a mother goddess, culture hero and/or member of the three sovereigns of Chinese mythology. She is a goddess in Chinese folk religion, Chinese Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism. She is credited with creating humanity and repairing the Pillar of Heaven. Zhou Luoxi didn't wait and immediately started to open the chest with the gold inside. Ying Che was wary. He was surprised that the system did not react in any way to the opening of the chest. He even thought that it was just gold in front of him, and he couldn't find any artifacts on this trip. I realize it's the end of the world, but why is the poor guy not interested in gold at all? Even now, with the support of the government, he doesn't have an endless budget. Zhou Luoxi also wondered why the guy was just standing around and not collecting gold bars. Ying Che had to admit that gold bars were not what he went to this place for. The girl couldn't understand a guy who would just give up on treasures like this. Since he was refusing, the girl decided that they should leave this place as soon as possible, as the mermaids might return soon. However, at that moment, the monster that was previously hiding in one of the buildings appeared in front of them. An E-ranked monster, Medusa, who had some sort of artifact in her hands, walked out towards them. Zhou Luoxi was incredibly frightened, as they had failed to escape undetected, and now they might have to escape as quickly as possible and leave the treasure in this place. The system reported that in Medusa's hands was the ownerless lamp, which was once a Baolian artifact that was used by the ancient deity of Daxia for both offense and defense. After the deity's death, the lamp went into a dormant state, becoming an ownerless lamp. Ying Che was incredibly excited when he saw the artifact in Medusa's hands, for it was exactly what he was looking for on this journey. Suddenly, a giant-sized waterspout formed in the still calm lake. Even the monster that had hatched from the egg and was left on the shore paid attention to the waterspout. In the center of the waterspout, Ying Che was jumping around Medusa in an attempt to reach her with his sword. However, all he did was complain that Medusa was too high up, and he couldn't reach her. He didn't understand when Medusa learned to fly at all. Zhou Luoxi was angry at the guy for thinking something completely different. She brought it to his attention that after his actions, they were now falling from a great height. However, they were saved at the very last moment when an egg monster appeared in front of them and they fell on top of it. The guy was surprised that Dandan could grow to such a size, so also learned to fly. The girl in the background, on the other hand, was incredibly scared that she had just almost died. Ying Che asked Dandan what species he belonged to, but the monster couldn't speak properly. Suddenly, the girl felt a bag behind her back. She was incredibly relieved that the treasure was still with her and decided that they needed to leave this place immediately. The guy thought it was a good suggestion, for at that moment the monster's giant tentacles came out of the water. The monster used its tentacles to completely twist Dandan, restraining his movements. Ying Che reacted with lightning speed, cutting all of the monster's tentacles with his sword. Then he ordered Dandan to carry the girl to the shore. In the next instant, the guy jumped off Dandan under the shocked gaze of the girl and Dandan. Zhou Luoxi even thought that the guy was definitely sick of living if he did something like this. In a second, the guy found himself entangled in the monster's tentacles. And Zhou Luoxi and Dandan went in a completely different direction. In this way, it was as if the guy had covered them from the enemy. As soon as they reached the shore, Dandan instantly returned to his usual form, and Zhou Luoxi only had to watch from the shore to see what the monster would do to the guy. The monster didn't wait long and pulled the captured guy to the bottom of the lake. At the bottom of the lake was a monster with F-rank tentacles, also known as King Namu Tree. As soon as the monster lowered the captured guy to the bottom of the lake, its 4 eyes immediately opened. The monster eyed the captured prey with suspicion. However, at this moment, Ying Che used a chopping sword strike and shattered its cocoon. After breaking out of the cocoon, he destroyed the King Namu Tree with swift chopping sword attacks. The system immediately reported that for successfully destroying his King Namu Tree, he received 1 characteristic point. In addition, the system also congratulated the guy for destroying King Namu Tree for the first time. The guy had successfully absorbed divine and demonic energy. As a result, in the 9 heavens system, his progress of opening the first heaven, Zhongtian, became 60%. Deciding not to stay underwater for long, the guy decided to surface. Just at this time, he noticed the animals swimming past him, who seemed to be still dizzy from the water spout. The information he received pleased him, for it seemed that luck was on his side. Using his blade, he destroyed the still shocked animals. The system reported that he had successfully destroyed the sea monkey. He gained 1 characteristic point, and his progress of opening the first heaven, Zhongtian, became 70%. He also received 1 characteristic point for destroying the sea turtle. His progress of opening the first heaven, Zhongtian, became 80%. The system asked the guy which characteristic he would like to improve, as there were 37 characteristic points available to him. After that, Ying Che floated to the surface, and just at that time, Dandan flew up to him. He climbed onto the giant Dandan's head and asked to be taken directly to Medusa. Getting with Dandan as close to Medusa as possible, the guy attacked her again. But even using the God of War's strike, he was unable to damage Medusa. The system informed him the enemy's defense was too high, so the guy's attacks didn't damage the enemy. Caught in such a situation, Ying Che told the system to put all the points into strength. Now the guy's strength was now increased to level 8, and 13 points were required to advance to the 9th level. After increasing the guy's strength, Medusa's shield began to crack. With multiple sword strikes, Ying Che began to destroy Medusa. Quite quickly, Medusa was defeated. The system gave the guy 10 character points for successfully destroying Medusa at once. After destroying Medusa, his progress of discovering First Heaven, Zhongtian, finally reached 100%. Ying Che noticed that the artifact ownerless lamp had started to fall into the water, so he told Dandan to fly straight towards the artifact. At great speed, holding the sword in his teeth, he was able to catch the artifact. However, it seems that because he caught the artifact at high speed, the artifact started to crack and collapsed right in his hands. The guy was shocked that such a hard-earned artifact was so easily destroyed. The system reported that the artifact was severely damaged, so Medusa scales were needed to repair it. He was lucky because he had just destroyed the Medusa, so he was able to save the artifact. The artifact was reforged, and the guy got the bracelet. The guy was incredibly touched that he was able to save the artifact he had worked so hard to obtain. Just then, the system reported that the guy had absorbed enough divine and demonic energy, so the first of the 9 heavens was opened. The system wondered if the guy was ready to move to the first heaven. However, at this point, someone started to resent the guy's actions, so he had to turn his attention to the stranger. The old man wondered what the girl was doing in the center of the lake and why she had abandoned the boat there. So the girl asked the old man for forgiveness. The old man didn't see how apologizing could help. Besides, if simple apologies worked, then they wouldn't need the police then. The girl had told him that she wanted an internship and that she could work for free. That was the only reason the old man had let her try, but the girl had pulled a stunt like that on the first day. He was unhappy that the girl drowned the passenger and told her to immediately hurry up and fetch the passenger. However, at this moment, Ying Che appeared and asked the old man if he was the one they were talking about. The old man was frightened, as if he had seen a ghost. Ying Che decided to deal with the situation, so he said that he was curious to know the legends about the center of the lake, so he asked the girl to take him there. The guy asked the old man not to blame the girl, because it's pretty hard for college students to get an internship. The girl was all glowing that the guy was like an angel and acted like one. The old man, however, was surprised that a high school student was standing up for a college student. The old man was relieved when he realized that nothing had happened, for otherwise he would have lost his work again. He noted that work should be suspended due to bad weather, so he told everyone to leave the area near the lake with him. Zhou Luoxi inquired if the guy had managed to retrieve the lamp. The guy decided to confess that the lamp had shattered to pieces. The girl was amazed and disappointed since it was such a good artifact. Ying Che asked the girl not to worry and remarked that he had something better, and then showed his new bracelet on his arm. Dandan at this moment looked at the bracelet suspiciously. Ying Che decided not to miss the moment and invited Zhou Luoxi to join them if she wanted to. Zhou Luoxi asked him to call her evil sister. He was surprised to hear evil sis, even thinking that maybe the girl was that young fortune teller from the legends in his past life. Zhou Luoxi admitted that the commander had already invited her to join once before, but she had declined. Ying Che wondered if the girl knew why the commander had invited her. She wasn't interested, so she thought the invitation was to serve in the army. However, she wasn't that ambitious. Besides, with these treasures she was carrying in her sack right now, she didn't feel like joining any army. Ying Che was well aware of the coming of the divine war, so he believed that simply enriching himself would not help save his life. He had gotten to know Zhou Luoxi a little better, so he thought that there was no need to worry about her, because she would definitely dominate in the future, and she shouldn't have a problem defending herself. Seeing the pensive guy, the girl wondered if they hadn't forgotten anything. The guy thought about it too, but still couldn't remember anything. After his trip, Ying Che decided to return home. At home, he took out a bracelet and gave it to his sister. The girl was shocked that her brother had given her such a shiny and beautiful bracelet. She wasn't even sure if it was definitely meant for her. Kneeling down beside his sister, he told her to always wear the bracelet on her arm wherever she went. Bao Bao was delighted because the bracelet looked so beautiful. The system successfully recognized the new owner of the bracelet. The brother began to tell his sister that the bracelet was not just beautiful and shining, but also a powerful weapon. So once again he made a point to make his sister understand him, because if he wasn't around, the bracelet would protect her. His brother explained that when a girl was in danger or felt threatened, she should just think about activating the protection. The bracelet would then set up a shield around the girl afterward. The sister was new to this, so she had fun with it and immediately activated the defense. At the same moment, a shield formed around her, pushing all of the monsters, including Dandan, to the ceiling. Her brother then explained that in order to deactivate the shield, her sister just had to think about deactivating the shield. Thinking about it, the sister deactivated the shield and Dandan began to fall down. As it turned out, the bracelet could not only protect the girl, but also attack enemies. To attack, the girl had to mentally say the word attack. Without thinking for a second, the sister immediately mentally uttered the word attack. Medusa appeared from the bracelet at the same second, looking at Dandan with obvious distrust. The girl was having fun watching Dandan run away from Medusa. She even asked for Dandan to stop running away from Medusa. What a bloodthirsty sister, bullying Dandan. Just at this moment, Ying Che received a call on his phone from headquarters. He explained that thanks to the guide he had managed to organize, he was able to get what he needed. At the base in the East Sea, Wang Zifan was shocked when she heard that the guy was going to go into seclusion at a time like this. Ying Che admitted that he still needed to continue his training. In addition, he was worried about the team, as he couldn't return to the base yet. The Mo Xiaoxiao sitting next to Wang Zifan decided to reassure the guy, informing him that they would also put in more effort. Ying Che was surprised to see Mo Xiaoxiao sitting next to Wang Zifan when he heard her voice. He reported that the intensity of the training should double from now on. Mo Xiaoxiao was not at all happy when she heard such an order, as she was already practicing hard, but now she had to double her training intensity. Wang Zifan noticed how Mo Xiaoxiao's face changed directly, and it was as if she had forgotten about the food. Meanwhile, the guy was reflecting on the fact that everything was finally ready. After his battle with Medusa, he could now enter the first heaven system that had finally been opened. Now he could greatly accelerate his training. There was too little time left, so he needed to become much stronger as soon as possible. He only had a month left before the full invasion would begin. The preparations were coming to an end, which meant that the real difficulties in the way of Ying Che, his sister, and all of humanity would soon begin. Despite the claims at the UN, clearly few people believed the divine invasion nonsense. Why he gave up on recruiting Zhou Luoxi so quickly, considering how few capable people they have. The secret weapon that Zhou Luoxi used to drive away the mermaids didn't interest him either. All that remains is to wait for the divine intervention and watch the decisions made. At the same time, the official was not left out and began to come up with a new devious plan. The man was incredibly frightened of what was about to happen to him. Through the official's connections, a man was kidnapped in order to sacrifice him. The secretary thanked all the masked men who had come today. He reported that the task today would be quite simple, as they needed to meet the sea god. The masked man reported that everything had been agreed upon in advance, and so there should be no problems. The masked man also asked that the official not forget his promise. The official was generous and again assured the masked men that if the plan succeeded, the masked men would have complete freedom of action in Jiangzhou. He promised that the masked men would be able to spread their faith as much as they wanted, as well as attract followers. The masked men were greedy, so they immediately asked if the official's promise only applied to Jiangzhou. The official became angry after such questions from the masked man. He said that whether they could do their activities outside of Jiangzhou would depend on their future performance. Now he was eager to start the experiment, so he told the masked men to start the experiment. The masked men also assured the official that they would keep their promise. The leader of the masked men then grabbed a small stick with spikes that fit in his hand and then clenched his hand into a fist. He began to invoke the mighty Poseidon. The poor kidnapped guy was incredibly frightened, seeing something like this for the first time and also well aware of his plight. The guard standing outside the door, who heard the screams and noise in the room, did not react, not even to the mysterious red glow coming from the door of the room. Ying Che went back home to pack before going on a new trip. After gathering the necessary things and food, he was about to embark on a new trip. He was glad that Bao Bao went to school with the bracelet. Plus, he warned his sister that he would be gone for a while and prepared food for her so she wouldn't starve. For the next few days, he was going to focus on training. Dandan, judging by his facial expression, wasn't particularly happy about going with the guy to training. The system wondered if the guy wanted to enter the first heaven. Putting all his doubts aside, the guy answered the system's question in the affirmative. At the same moment, he found himself on some kind of battlefield, where behind the regular warriors stood the giant silhouettes of someone in the dust. The warriors were fighting for their honor, putting all their might. However, as soon as Ying Che took just one step towards the battlefield, the dust instantly settled and all the warriors disappeared. The guy didn't understand what was even going on here. The system explained to him that all he was seeing were the remnants of a great divine war that had occurred 10,000 years ago. Although all the warriors had long died, their awe-inspiring and immortal memory was still alive in this world. Suddenly, a huge torrent of wind swept over the guy. Along with the wind, red energy rushed towards the guy that he even grabbed the hilt of his sword with his right hand. However, the red energy rushed straight towards him and flew towards him right into his forehead. Ying Che instantly felt a lot of knowledge flowing into his brain at this moment. It was as if endless information about the battles of countless warriors had been downloaded into the guy's head. In an instant, he was once again in the heat of battle, where gigantic silhouettes could be seen somewhere in the distance. Ying Che instantly reacted by using the infinite blade technique, which was like utilizing yin and yang. From such a powerful technique, everything around the guy soaked in energy and exploded. And then the dust of battle instantly disappeared again, and he suddenly discovered that he was tied to his sword by some red ribbon. He tried to figure out what this red ribbon was that had appeared in his hand. The system came to his rescue and explained that in the first heaven, the host could choose to power an oriental deity. Each of these leftover weapons in front of the guy carried a part of the deity's power. The silk ribbon in his hand, also known as Hun Tian Ling, symbolized the power of one of the deities. The system asked the guy if he wished to absorb some of the power of the oriental deity associated with the silk ribbon. After hearing about Hun Tian Ling, the guy began to guess who the deity was and wished to absorb some of that deity's strength. Dandan looked at the silk ribbon in the guy's hands with obvious disbelief. As soon as he began to absorb some of the eastern deity's power, a red mark appeared on his forehead. His hair also changed a lot, and everything around him was covered as if by small clouds. The system congratulated its master for being able to gain the power of an oriental deity. The system also informed him that he now had to undergo training that would help him master his new power. Looking at his hand and feeling the energy flowing around him, he understood. He was trying to realize the power of the deity. At this moment, a divine general who was a heavenly soldier appeared behind him. However, he considered him the easiest opponent, for he thought that he was just another illusion in front of him. He once again used the infinite blade technique. However, at the same moment, he felt that this time was different. The system immediately gave the guy credit for successfully killing the celestial soldier and also gave him one characteristic point. The system reminded the guy that although heavenly soldiers were an illusion, their attacks caused real pain, and so it was possible to get extra points for killing them. At the same moment, not one, but several celestial soldiers pointed their weapons towards the guy. At the last moment, he managed to dodge the giant mace aimed at his head by the celestial soldier. He even smiled, finding this situation interesting. He then used the infinite blade technique once again. The entire area around him lit up with explosions. The system kept telling him over and over again that for successfully killing a heavenly soldier, he would receive one characteristic point. After he had defeated all the heavenly soldiers, the deity finally showed up. The deity was happy to see the guy's excellent skills, and the deity also thought that the guy was worthy of fighting the deity. Ying Che could immediately recognize the deity as it was Neja. Neja, or sometimes Neja the Crown Prince, is a protection deity in Taoism, Buddhism, and Chinese folk religion. His official Taoist name is Marshal of the Central Altar. He was then given the title Third Lotus Prince after he became a deity. What surprised the guy, however, was not that Neja showed up, but that Neja turned out to be a girl. The great immortal Neja. The system informed the guy that the deity Neja was depicted in front of him, which demonstrated the power of the Oriental deity whose power the guy had decided to absorb. The system also indicated that the deity's appearance could change depending on the person's perception. With his face incredibly red with shame, Ying Che yelled at the system that this was not how he had imagined Neja at all. At this moment, a Kunlun ring flew towards him. Running away from the deity's attacks, the guy complained about the system. The system had previously reported that the guy had obtained the deity's power, so the guy didn't understand why he was always getting beaten up. The system explained to him that once he defeated the current battle projection, he would fully master the divine power he had obtained. Ying Che was constantly dodging the deity's attacks and getting angrier and angrier. Because the system was telling him some nonsense. He had absolutely no idea how he could defeat Neja, who was incredibly strong and all, so that he could unlock his powers. All beaten up and running away from Neja, the guy suddenly saw the warriors in front of him. The system immediately reminded the guy that in a true divine war, not only are the main combatants involved, there are also countless soldiers who are also fighting. The Neja in female form was now taunting and asking the guy how he could escape from her now. A multitude of heavenly warriors with spears and swords were running towards him. Looking at Dandan, Ying Che wondered if he could help him. Dandan increased in size, and then Ying Che jumped on his head and they flew forward. Soon Ying Che and Dandan tiredly found themselves in the guy's room. They lay down on the floor to catch their breath from such a hard and tiring battle. During the time he was being beaten up, he didn't even notice how 3 whole days had passed. He even wondered if his sister missed him while he was away. According to the system's current data about the guy, strength, level 9, agility, level 9, endurance, level 9, spirit, level 8, remaining points, 0. Looking at his stats, he realized that the special training had yielded results, but he was still far away from defeating Neja. Looking at the screen of his phone, he was incredibly surprised because according to the stopwatch, only 15 minutes had passed. The system once again clarified that the passage of time inside 9 heavens was different from the outside world. 1 year in 9 heavens equals 1 day in the outside world. 15 days equals 1 hour in the outside world. Ying Che didn't expect such a secret in 9 heavens. With the help of this cheat, he would be able to quickly recover and surpass his peak strength from his past life. After all the explanations, the system once again asked if the guy wanted to enter the first heaven. Putting aside all his doubts after learning the secret, he immediately agreed to the system's suggestion. Meanwhile, in the room with Poseidon's invocation, the ritual was coming to its conclusion. The official, his secretary, and everyone else could see the sea god, Poseidon, rank B, begin to emerge from the subject's body. He immediately looked at the official and addressed him, calling him human. The official was scared and happy at the same time. He stated that he was glad to finally meet the sea god Poseidon, and that he already knew of Poseidon's plan to invade Earth. Poseidon's look instantly turned serious as he tried to ask the official how he knew about his plan. The official explained that there was a prophet among mankind. Poseidon was not surprised that a prophet had appeared on a planet as vast as Earth. He was curious as to why a pitiful man appeared before him. He even thought that the pitiful man had decided to declare war on him. However, the official said that he was here to negotiate. He reported that the humans wanted to make peace before the god invaded their planet. The official even asked Poseidon to name any condition and that the people would fulfill his condition. After the official's words, Poseidon laughed out loud. He confessed that he never expected that after all these years, the people of this planet had become so weak. After that, Poseidon decided that there was no point in waiting any longer. He wanted to start a war as soon as possible. After all, he was sure that they would win. The official was counting on Poseidon to agree to a deal with some pathetic little man. He begged Poseidon to name any condition to make peace. He said that the humans were willing to offer the gods tribute every year: gold, treasure, land, minerals. Poseidon called the official a fool, for Poseidon did not understand what use he had for the things of mortals. He reported that their king and god desired the whole earth. All this time they had struggled to locate Earth, which delayed their invasion. And now the humans have approached them directly, revealing not only the coordinates of Earth, but also the pitiful power of the humans. Now they could inform their allies and unite the gods to launch an attack on Earth. However, he asked that none of the gods be informed for now, for such a valuable opportunity could not be missed. He decided that he himself would be the first deity to set foot on Earth. Poseidon then shot green energy from his trident at the official, but the official covered himself with his secretary, and the green beam from the trident hit his secretary. The secretary's body instantly turned into a mummy, as if all the water had been pumped out of his body. The official threw away the body of his secretary and tried to escape from the place. At that moment, however, tentacles appeared out of nowhere. The tentacles grabbed the official's arms and legs and then dragged him back into the room. Also attacked with tentacles were all the guards who stood outside the door of the room where the secret experiment was being conducted. Meanwhile, in the divine realm, one of Poseidon's subordinates informed him that the priests on the other side were unable to resist Poseidon's power, so the link was broken. However, before the connection was broken, they were successfully able to lock on to the coordinates of Earth. The subordinate who reported the happy news to Poseidon was a low-level D-rank sea god. Poseidon informed his subordinate that they must act quickly and descend to Earth before all other gods. The subordinate arrogantly stated that given the current strength of mankind, humans were no more than ants to them, easily crushed. Hearing his subordinate's words, Poseidon only laughed arrogantly. He was already anticipating how Earth would soon be his domain. Usually such selfish desires do not end in anything good. The official played in this chess game against the Earth, not finding an opportunity to negotiate with Poseidon, simply surrendered the coordinates of the Earth to Poseidon. And Poseidon, in turn, played against the other gods, which should naturally end badly for him in the future. A one-eyed monster with tentacles broke the wall and broke into the base. A guard tried to stop the monster, but he quickly noticed that his weapon was completely useless against the monster. The terrified guy complained that his weapon did not harm the monster in any way. As soon as he said that, all of his ammo supply was used up. The monster quickly grabbed the guy by the neck with its tentacle. However, help came to the guy. The girl chopped the monster horizontally with lightning speed. She was shocked as she didn't realize what was even happening. Mo Xiaoxiao couldn't understand how the monster was able to appear inside their base. However, thanks to her new skills, the girl managed to destroy the monster. Soon she came to Chang Huchen's office with a report on the monster incident. Wang Zifan perplexedly asked the girl how the monster had gotten into their base, since the base had incredibly strict security. Mo Xiaoxiao agreed with her, as she herself was surprised that the base was attacked from the inside, not the outside. After hearing the girl's report about the monster situation, Chang Huchen ordered to immediately search the entire base for intruders and monsters. Meanwhile, Ying Che, all beaten up, once again returned to his home from 9 heavens. Looking at his watch and finding the time to be 8:15 a.m., he was happy to notice that hours had passed since he got to 9 heavens, and in reality only a few minutes. He even had time to notice that his food had managed to run out, so he walked over to the refrigerator to grab some food from it to take with him before heading back inside. After taking food from the fridge and resting for a while, Ying Che returned to 9 heavens and immediately called Neja over. Neja was already sitting there and was lazily bored. She asked the guy not to call her out impolitely. Throwing his backpack on the ground, Ying Che once again asked Neja to fight him. However, Neja thought the guy was too weak. The guy started teasing her, insinuating that Neja was just scared to fight him. After regaining his red-marked form, the guy started taunting that Neja was afraid to accept his challenge. Neja gave in to the guy's provocation. Neja arrogantly stated that she would play along with the guy and would not hold back this time. Ying Che immediately felt Neja's anger and his backpack flew aside. Bread in bags started to fall out of the backpack. A water tornado began to form around the guy. The guy couldn't understand where seawater even came from in a place like this. Hun Tian Ling began to wriggle around Neja's arm, and then Neja shouted that the sea had opened and the dragon had died. At the same instant, Hun Tian Ling punched the guy in the face. From that punch, the guy flew up and flew far away. Neja continued to mock the guy. After all, the guy is shouting loudly, but he is still as weak as before. Meanwhile, somewhere out at sea, a little boy was shouting to the guy next to him that he had seen a whale. The boy was worried about the boy, so he asked him to be careful not to fall overboard. Suddenly, some kind of rift or warp opened up in the sky, and the boy was very surprised, not realizing what was happening. From the rift, black drops began to fall at once, like ink. Quite quickly, the falling black drops turned into rain. The boy covered his face with his hands to prevent the black raindrops from hitting his eyes. However, at that moment, a tentacle appeared in place of his right hand. The guy ran to help his little brother as soon as he saw the strange rain. The guy didn't even have time to run to his brother before a tentacle began to form from his left hand as well. Quite quickly, under the influence of the black rain, the guy and his younger brother turned into sea monsters. Just at that moment, a mysterious figure appeared from the rift. The operator of the unmanned ship in the Eastern Sea was able to detect the unknown life form quite quickly. However, he was still unable to react and dodge in time, and the huge monster, which was like a kraken, grabbed the ship with its tentacle. Then the monster easily broke the ship into 2 parts with its huge tentacle. Meanwhile, at the Marine Research Station, suddenly the Marine Research Station received a signal. The chief told a subordinate to report to headquarters that the unmanned ship's signal had suddenly disappeared. In addition, he didn't understand what was even happening and why the monitor had turned black. He also asked to report that before the signal was lost, the data from the unmanned ship showed that the pollution level was as if a whole pack of Godzillas had passed through. They had never seen anything like this before. The chief even thought that something unimaginably terrible had probably happened. Therefore, they needed to immediately report to the people above them about such an anomaly that happened in their sector. Mo Xiaoxiao, meanwhile, was dealing with the monsters that had infiltrated the base. Her giant scythe was covered in monster blood. The girl was trying to wipe the monster's blood off her face. In the back of her mind, she was complaining that she was completely unable to get rid of such a pungent, fishy odor that she was now imbued with. Chang Huchin approached her from behind and inquired about the current monster situation. Mo Xiaoxiao informed the commander that all the squid monsters, also known as alien creatures, had been destroyed. However, ordinary weapons against the monsters were ineffective, so it was an internal emergency. Because of the monsters' infiltration, they had suffered heavy losses. And she also thought that another loss was that the entire base smelled like seafood, but she didn't voice it to the commander. In addition, a team of experienced cleaners had already been dispatched to clean the entire base. Chang Huchen noticed a serious flaw. Their personnel lacked experience in fighting monsters, and they had weak weapons that didn't help against monsters. The commander wanted to solve the problem as soon as possible. However, what bothered him the most was the surveillance tape from the room across from him. Chang Huchen had already had time to review the video recording from the room of the moment yesterday when the official had contacted Poseidon and thus voluntarily gave Poseidon the coordinates of Earth. Chang Huchen was worried that since the sea god had learned Earth's coordinates, he would most likely arrive much earlier than planned. At the same moment, a subordinate ran up to Chang Huchen. He shouted to the commander that there was an emergency. The subordinate reported to the commander that an unmanned ship had been dispatched to the East Sea last night. The monitoring detected strange activity in that region. The subordinate, also showing a photo, reported that everything looked black. Wang Zifan didn't understand what they should see in the photo if it was black. The subordinate explained that although the photo was all black, you could see the energy fluctuations. Then he showed another photo and said that the photo was taken using a new technology that amplifies energy wave signatures. In the second photo, the silhouette of an unidentified monster could already be seen. The subordinate pointed out that a larger version of the squid monster could be seen in the photo. Whereas before they could barely handle 5 ordinary squid monsters, in the photo one could see how gigantic the monster was. Everyone present immediately noticed how huge the monster's tentacles were and that it would be incredibly difficult to defeat it. They wondered where the monster got its divine power from. Chang Huchen was also most curious about where the monster got its divine power from. The commander didn't want to believe that the sea god had already made his move and this giant monster was his work. Chang Huchen realized that the situation had escalated, so he asked where Yingche was now. Mo Xiaoxiao explained that the guy was currently at home and practicing in seclusion. With regret in his voice, Chang Huchen said that the situation had changed, so he told them to call Yingche and tell him to come to the base. They needed the guy's strength to get out of the current crisis. In addition, Chang Huchen told them to notify the entire fleet and immediately increase patrols in the said sea regions. In the back of his mind, he complained that the insane actions of the idiot official had almost destroyed the entire base, and also because of the official, the location of Earth had been revealed. Meanwhile, at sea, a giant squid monster has taken over one of the ships. People were panicking and trying to leave the ship, because if they didn't leave the ship, it would be too late. However, they were prevented from leaving the ship by monsters that grabbed people one by one. A low-level sea god had also arrived on Earth. He was delighted that there was so much food on the blessed Earth. However, he told the monsters not to eat the humans, but to let them live. The small squid monsters grabbed the humans, preventing them from escaping. The low-level sea god wanted to recruit as many followers of Poseidon as possible. After all, only with the devoted faith in Poseidon of a multitude of people would Poseidon be able to descend to Earth as quickly as possible and rule the sea. A few minutes later, 3 warships arrived at the ship. The captain of the ship immediately tried to contact the center. He reported that they were too late and that the target had most likely already moved to their rear. There was an immediate report from the command center that the target may have already possibly reached their position. The fleet prepared for battle and intensified their focus. The captain of the flagship, Captain Hugh, asked to cross out the word possibly, as the enemy was already near them. Through his binoculars, Captain Hugh could clearly see giant tentacles sticking out of the water near the next ship. A low-level sea god, as well as its monster squids, have taken over the ship. One guy was tied up by the tentacles, and he complained and told the octopus to let him go immediately. The people who were standing next to him were incredibly scared. The guy was hurling threats in the direction of the low-level sea god. The guy promised to cut up the octopus, then roast it, and then feed it to the fish and dogs afterward. He told the low-level sea god to immediately approach him if he had the courage. The low-level sea god didn't react in any way to all the threats from the guy. Suddenly, he sensed an incredibly strong fragrance. He felt the breath of humanity, anticipating the incredible number of people that waited ahead of him. They were just moving in the right direction. Meanwhile, at the base in the Eastern Sea, one by one, subordinates reported to the commander that they were in an emergency situation because the target was rapidly approaching. The man reported that with the current speed of the target, it could be expected that the target would reach the coast of the East Sea very soon. He also asked that the commander give the order. Chang Huchen was extremely annoyed that everything had happened at such a time. However, he could not give slack or wait too long. The commander announced that the situation was critical and that they couldn't let the enemy get any closer. Therefore, he ordered the fleet on the front lines to take all necessary combat actions immediately. He also told the First Department to immediately gather the Godslayer troops and deploy a defensive line along the eastern coast. Mo Xiaoxiao understood the commander's order. The liaison addressed all the units. He relayed the commander's order, informing them that the destroyer fleet was authorized to take any necessary action. The destroyer fleet had to buy time until the East Coast defense setup was completed. Captain Hu instantly announced that a Level 1 alert had been initiated. Ying Che would most likely be like Saitama in the Monster Association arc, and would appear at the very last moment of the battle with the Sea God. In the meantime, people should realize how powerless they are against divine monsters. All the fleet's ship commands were raised on alert. The captain received a message that the destroyer's main weapon was ready for use. The target was taken in the scope, and the man was waiting for the captain's command to attack the target. As soon as the captain's permission was granted and the order was given to attack the enemy, shots rang out from all the ships in the fleet towards the enemy ship. Almost all the shots from the ship's cannons hit the target accurately. The captain received a report of a direct hit. However, he saw for himself that their attack had no effect on the enemy. Nevertheless, the captain was not going to give up, but was going to accomplish the task at all costs. Therefore, he ordered torpedoes to be launched at the enemy immediately. Torpedoes from all ships were launched, and, as well as a volley of cannons, hit the target. However, this too was of no help, as the unknown life form was approaching them at high speed. One of the ships tried to dodge to the left, but just at that moment a giant monster surfaced out of the water. Things were incredibly bad, and their time was up. The monster had almost completely surfaced, and it turned out to be just unbelievably gigantic in size. The captain refused to give up. Even at such a second, he gave his last order: attack all enemy targets using maximum firepower. After his words, the destroyer he was on was bitten in half by a giant monster. The subordinate began to panic slightly, as the captain appeared to have perished. He was going to take all the monsters with him, but not let anyone go through them. He then told the others to take aim. Afterward, he told them to continue the continuous powerful bombardment of the monsters. A barrage of fire from the ships rained down on the giant monster, but it did not cause it any significant damage. The low-level sea god watched the entire confrontation. He was amused by how stupid and amusing the little men were. To him, this kind of senseless resistance from humans against them was simply laughable. Nevertheless, he was thrilled that the tiny blue star was as easy to conquer as expected. Chang Huchen, who was watching the battle from the headquarters, sadly and shockingly remarked that usually weapons were useless and that even heavy weapons had no effect on the monsters. He once again asked if Ying Che had arrived on the battlefield. However, Wang Zifan reported that they were unable to contact the fellow. Chang Huchen couldn't understand how this could even happen. Wang Zifan explained that their men couldn't find the guy, and the guy seemed to have disappeared. The commander was angered by this kind of information. He ordered to send more people to search for the guy. Chang Huchen even ordered to turn the whole of Jiangzhou upside down, but to find the guy and bring him immediately to him. The subordinates understood the commander's order. At the same time, Ying Che wasn't exactly relaxing. He tried to provoke Neja again, asking her if she wanted to say that she had lost. However, Neja continued to respond to all the outbursts and provocations from the guy and refused to give up. The girl didn't understand what the guy was up to when he put a ring around her neck. After her words, Ying Che exhaled tiredly as he grabbed the hilt of his sword. The guy tied the girl up and then took his sword out of its sheath. Neja didn't understand what the guy was even up to. After 300 days of fighting, Ying Che was finally able to win, something he was very proud of. After he said that, he swung his sword and chopped the fake Neja. Neja tried to stop him, but he didn't listen to her. Once he dealt with Neja, the system reported that the guy had successfully defeated Neja and that he had gotten 0 attribute points. At this moment, all of his attributes were level 9. After reading the system's alert, the guy was incredibly indignant that he hadn't gotten any attribute points. He grabbed what was left of Neja by the collar and wondered why. If Neja lost, he wasn't being awarded any attribute points. The system informed him that it wasn't that it didn't want to award him attribute points at all, it was just that the guy had already reached the maximum level. And if he wanted to level up, he had to open the next realm, the second heaven. Ying Che queried about the next realm, and then the system pointed the guy to the stone monkey behind him. To activate the second heaven, the guy needs to shake the stone monkey's hand to let it feel an aura that is stronger than the stone monkey's. Then the guy will be able to open the way to the second heaven. Otherwise, Ying Che will be stuck in the first heaven until he accumulates enough external merits. The guy stared at the stone monkey incredulously, for everything sounded too simple. Everything around the guy sparkled as he resolutely went to the stone monkey. He was going to show the monkey all the raging power that was hidden within him. When he approached the stone monkey, he grabbed its hand and then politely asked it to send him to the second heaven. However, as soon as he touched the monkey's hand, it declared that he was not worthy of it and pushed him out. Ying Che rumblingly appeared in his room, the monkey's push nearly destroying the wall of the apartment. Leaving the wall and landing on the floor, the guy started cursing the damn monkey. He was furious at the monkey's antics, so he immediately asked the system to open the southern heaven gate for him. However, the system informed the guy that he didn't have enough authority to do so. This made Ying Che even more angry, for it turns out they were all involved in this. He even threatened to tear them all apart. Just at this moment, the door to the room opened abruptly. The commander's subordinate came running into his room at the noise and excitedly shouted that the guy was here and they had finally found him. Such an action by the subordinate commander only caused the guy to be perplexed. Meanwhile, thanks to the wall and the helicopters, the military was still able to fight off the monsters. Although they couldn't really harm the monsters, but only delay them. Despite all the defensive efforts made, the monsters continued to break through and advance. The giant monster was already storming the wall with the rest of the monsters. The military tried to hold back the monsters by constantly attacking them, including from helicopters. They were commanded to keep the sea beasts behind the iron wall. At all costs, the military had to prevent the monsters from crossing the defense line. They tried again and again to attack and obstruct the giant sea monster in every way possible. The giant monster didn't ignore their attacks on it, but tried to attack the helicopters. The wall successfully deterred the attacks of such a formidable and gigantic monster, but soon it began to crack. The military realized that at this rate the wall could be breached. They tried to follow orders and hold the defense line by increasing their firepower. However, the monster stopped being distracted by the helicopters and forcefully jumped out of the water and brought the full power of its body down on the wall. Because of this monster's pressure, the wall was broken through after all. The sea monsters whipped after the giant sea monster into the breached gap in the wall. One of the helicopters immediately reported to headquarters that the enemy had broken through the first line of defense, so they were requesting reinforcements. On the second line of defense, fighters from the Godslayer squad were already waiting for the arriving monsters. Mo Xiaoxiao excitedly reminded all the Godslayer squad fighters that they had trained incredibly long and hard, so now it was time for their squad to show their strength to protect the Earth. The girl grabbed her weapon and was the first to rush into battle. The soldiers of the Godslayer squad were shocked. They saw for the first time what their commander could be like. After all, as soon as Mo Xiaoxiao released her scythe, she began to destroy the monsters one by one without showing any pity. The monsters with burning eyes rushed towards the girl, but the girl's giant scythe didn't leave any of the monsters a chance. Although there were many sea monsters, but because of Mo Xiaoxiao's actions, the ranks of sea monsters were rapidly thinning. However, the girl was not satisfied with her results, as she realized that at this rate they would be fighting monsters endlessly. In addition, the giant sea monster was still not going anywhere, and it would be much harder to deal with it than the monsters she had already destroyed. Shangguang Guozi also entered the battle, destroying the monsters that were near him. In the heat of battle, he noticed that a whale was widening a gap in the wall, so he informed the others that they needed to stop this monster as soon as possible. After all, if the monsters got beyond the wall, then it meant the Godslayer squad had failed their mission. Mo Xiaoxiao decided to take the task of dealing with the giant whale upon herself, but in return she told the others to make sure that not even a fly would get past them, let alone a monster. Xu Dao and Wen Bei understood what Mo Xiaoxiao was trying to tell them. When Mo Xiaoxiao heard that everyone understood what she was asking them to do, she began to rush forward towards the whale, destroying the monsters in her path. The whale also did not wait silently for its fate, but rushed towards the girl. Deftly manipulating her weapon, Mo Xiaoxiao used the Scythe of Death against the whale. As a result of her attack, she was able to severely injure the whale, causing a monstrous commotion in the sea. After her attack, the girl landed on the whale's back. With a smile, she told the monsters that further weaklings like them would not be allowed in, as outsiders were not allowed to enter. The girl managed to deal with the giant whale right in the gap in the wall. Thus, the giant whale's body was closing the gap that the whale itself had created earlier. The monsters nearby were also hit by Mo Xiaoxiao's giant scythe attack. The low-level sea god only now noticed that the sea monsters were huddled together and not moving forward. He didn't understand what was even going on. The low-level sea god seemed to have agreed earlier that they needed to speed up their assault, and they were slowing down. Finally, he stopped waiting and decided to see who was holding everyone up. After all, this monster is definitely the king of slackers. At this time, one of the monsters tried to attack Mo Xiaoxiao from the back. However, the girl easily repelled the monster's attack, destroying it with her giant scythe. But this entire incident was observed by the low-level sea god. To solve the problem, he immediately used the abyss tentacle on the already wounded and tired girl to capture her. However, with the ease of changing the shape of her weapon, Mo Xiaoxiao dodged the low-level sea god's attack. Using her giant scythe, the girl tried to attack him by shooting energy from the scythe. The low-level sea god easily dodged her attack, but the attack still slightly grazed his cheek, leaving a small cut. The arrogant low-level sea god was hurt that the girl dared to harm him. He immediately went into battle mode, informing him that the girl would pay for injuring him. The weather changed drastically and the sky was covered in clouds as he decided to use the sea god's wrath. He easily managed to throw back Mo Xiaoxiao, who promptly fell onto the whale's body. Her wounds were not fatal, but she was seriously hurt by one such attack. The monsters, seeing that the girl was weak and vulnerable, immediately rushed to attack her. At this moment, Shang Guanguozi came to her aid and attacked one group of monsters. Xu Dao dealt with the second group of monsters with the energy released from his hand. Wen Bei threw his beads and attacked the third group of monsters. The girl had faith in her team, not paying attention to the smaller monsters. Her gaze was still fixed on the low-level sea god. Shangguan Guozi pointed out that the girl's rear was closed, so none of the monsters would even get close to her. The guys informed the girl to leave the defense to them, while she herself tried to focus only on the flying mosquito in front of her. Mo Xiaoxiao understood what the guys were trying to convey to her, so she immediately smiled. The low-level sea god was pissed off that he wasn't being put into anything, so he ordered all the monsters to rush to attack. He felt that since the ants were so eager to die, he would give them the opportunity. The sea monsters once again furiously rushed to attack, trying to destroy the Godslayer squad. Mo Xiaoxiao had to break through the countless monsters once again. In the end, she declared that she was leaving the rear to the others, and she herself was tearing towards the main monster. Momo didn't see any problem with this because although there were many monsters, they were weak. Wen Bei was also standing on the defense, trying not to let the monsters pass. Mo Xiaoxiao with a giant scythe was rushing forward towards the low-level sea god, urging him to give her his life. The girl swung her death scythe and tried to strike the low-level sea god. Just at this moment, Ying Qi was slicing watermelon at his home. After slicing the watermelon, he offered a slice to the commander's subordinate. However, the subordinate grabbed his hands on his head. He stated that now is not the time to eat watermelon, as the date of the divine descent has been changed. The man asked the guy to immediately go with him since the divine descent had already started. Ying Che yelled at the man for not telling him this information earlier. However, the commander's subordinate resented the guy for not giving him even a chance to tell him this information earlier. It looked like Ying Che would still have to go to the battlefield without eating watermelon. With great difficulty, Mo Xiaoxiao managed to defeat the low-level sea god, and she tried to catch her breath while sitting on the remains of the low-level sea god's body. Chang Huchen was astonished when he saw that she had still managed to defeat the low-level sea god. All the people in the headquarters who were watching the battle rose from their seats and clapped happily. The low-level sea god's main body, meanwhile, was sinking to the very bottom. However, he didn't stop there and began to cast a spell. He began summoning the great creature. At the same instant, a bright blue ray shot out from him into the sky. Mo Xiaoxiao turned around to look at the blue ray rushing towards the sky to see what was even happening. As soon as the blue ray touched the sky, it was as if the sky opened up and its color changed. Sparks started flying from the sky in all directions. It was obvious to everyone that something dangerous was happening, and no one was wrong. From the blue ray, as if from a summoning gate, the silhouette of a giant figure appeared. The kidnapped people on the captured ship were in complete shock when they saw the giant figure. The octopus-bound man was terrified as he realized that a god had appeared in front of them. He was terrified that the god had actually arrived on planet Earth. The kidnapped people immediately knelt down, praising the god. However, the man called them a bunch of idiots. He asked them to look carefully and pointed out to them that the devil in the guise of a god had actually appeared before them. The god who appeared felt a kickback from the people who believed in him. The sea god himself, Poseidon, appeared before them. Thus Poseidon arrived on Earth. Poseidon slowly looked around the battlefield that the low-level sea god had summoned him to. Chang Huchen was not going to give Poseidon even a chance, so he ordered all the military men to stop Poseidon. One of the submarines started preparing to launch strategic missiles, and then the countdown began. After that, a strategic missile was launched from the submarine towards Poseidon. As soon as the strategic missile reached Poseidon, there was a deafening explosion and everything was covered in smoke. However, once the smoke cleared a little, it was obvious to everyone that the strategic missile had not done any damage to Poseidon. They did not have to beg Poseidon long to respond to such insolence on the part of the wretched humans. He grabbed his trident and then used the shining strike of the divine trident. The submarine quickly noticed that an unknown energy had been detected. Therefore, all the crew members of the submarine were informed that an emergency dive was about to begin. However, they could not get far away from Poseidon. He pointed his trident in their direction and then released the shining strike of the divine trident towards them. The submarine was blasted away. He pointed his trident again, and at the same moment the sea raged, and then gigantic stones flew in all directions. Mo Xiaoxiao, trying to dodge the giant rocks, couldn't believe that the wall they had spent so long building was so easily destroyed by Poseidon. At that moment, she thought about it and didn't have time to dodge, so the giant stone had to catch up with her. However, at this moment, the giant stone suddenly shattered into pieces as someone shattered it. As it turned out, Ying Qi had finally arrived at the battlefield. He flew in so quickly since he was on Dandan. Dandan, this moment with his mouth and hands, was holding the other people they had managed to save. Ying Qi noted that the day he had been waiting for so long had finally arrived, even though this day had come earlier than scheduled. People who were far away from the battle site rushed to the windows when they saw what was happening to the weather and the sky outside. They were trying to figure out what was even happening now. Some, with fear in their voices, though refusing to believe it, suggested that the coming of the gods that the state had told them about was actually happening. They didn't want to believe it. But what if a god had actually appeared on planet Earth? At this time, at the school where Ying Baobao was studying, it was announced over the loudspeaker that God had appeared on Earth and that for the safety of teachers and students, all classes were cancelled for the next few days by the city education department. Teachers and students are not allowed outside the premises, and everyone was also ordered to ensure their safety. Students, as well as teachers, were shocked to hear such an alert at the school. When Ying Baobao heard the announcement of God's coming, the first thing she thought of was her brother. Meanwhile, in the territory of the mysterious organization run by Patriarch Li Yunfei, a room with many objects shimmered. The man on guard immediately grabbed his head as if demonic energy was rushing into him. He let go of the phone from his hands and the phone fell to the floor. The clothes on his body began to tear, his body began to change, and his skin began to tear. Soon he completely changed from a human into a flame skeleton. Flame Skeleton then kicked down the door that he had to guard before his transformation. Once inside the room, he immediately grabbed the magic crystal. And then, even forgetting about the salt, he began to eat the magic crystal. Flame Skeleton continued to calmly eat the magic crystal. At this moment, it was as if eyes appeared on the mysterious book, and it turned its attention to him. Immediately, Li Xiaolu and the others entered the room. She told one of her men to report that the device had been destroyed and that the forbidden artifact was gone. After all, the book was no longer in this place. Hearing the noise, Flaming Skeleton, still gnawing on the magic crystal, turned his head in their direction. Li Xiaolu announced to the others that she would disarm Flame Skeleton and the others should immediately report the matter to the Patriarch. Meanwhile, the mysterious book rushed to Jiangzhou City. The mysterious book pondered that by choosing such a remote location, it was unlikely that he could be caught in that place. However, at this moment, the military noticed with a search that a signal had appeared. They were looking for the book, so the leader announced to the others that the artifact was nearby and asked the others to search carefully all around. At the same time in Yuanling Elementary School, Ying Baobao was heading home from school and looking at the note in her hands and didn't understand what was happening to her big brother now and where he was. The note that her brother had left her and that she was now reading was that her older brother was going to protect the earth. He said that in the meantime his sister should ask the aunt next door to feed her a couple of meals. He noted that he had already made arrangements with Auntie. Ying Che also reported that he will always love his sister. Finally, one of the military reported that he had found the source of the signal and then pointed to the sky. The book flying through the sky was surprised that they had found it so quickly. The artifact was about to teleport but suddenly discovered that the skill was on a cooldown. Putting part of the book back in place, the artifact couldn't figure out what to do in such a situation. Suddenly, he noticed Ying Baobao, who was walking from school with her school backpack. The book immediately reacted and flew towards the girl and then climbed into her backpack. The military ran past the girl, who was still reading the note her brother had left her. One of the military noticed that the signal was too weak and that they could no longer track the artifact. However, they realized that the artifact must still be around. They began to look around as if searching for something, which attracted unwanted attention from people passing by. They were angry and upset that the artifact had escaped from them after all. Nevertheless, they had to report to their higher command that Operation Flying Bear had failed and they had lost the target. Now all they had to do was wait for further instructions from higher command. Meanwhile, the battle in the sea continued. Poseidon pointed his trident towards Ying Che and Mo Xiaoxiao. He declared to the guy that by possessing this divine power, the guy might be able to fight him 100 years later. But right now, he didn't even consider the guy as his opponent. Looking at Poseidon, Mo Xiaoxiao couldn't believe that a real god had appeared in front of them. After all, a god couldn't even be destroyed by a nuclear bomb, which is a weapon of mass destruction. Poseidon decided to end this battle as quickly as possible since he still had to take over the earth, so he used his Wrath of Poseidon ability. From his trident, a bright beam shot out. Noticing Poseidon's attack aimed at them, Ying Che told Mo Xiaoxiao to be careful. At the same instant, an explosion with a powerful shockwave erupted. However, from this explosion, Ying Che jumped out lightning fast, holding Mo Xiaoxiao in his arms, who still didn't understand what had just happened. Landing nearby with the girl in his arms on the remains of the giant wall, Ying Che began to reprimand the girl. He asked why she just stands during the battle and stayed on the battlefield after Poseidon arrived, and why she acts like she doesn't value her life. Still shocked, the girl tried to find words to somehow justify herself, but she had no suitable words. Placing the girl on the remains of the wall, the guy informed her that this was no longer a battle she could take part in. He also told Mo Xiaoxiao to take her feet off the battlefield if she valued her life. Mo Xiaoxiao did not argue with them, saying that she understood his order. Looking at the guy, she couldn't help but feel that he had become a completely different person. At this moment, Dandan furiously started biting Poseidon that he even turned his attention to him. Poseidon lightly swung his hand as if he was chasing away a fly that was bothering him. Dandan immediately flew off to the side, not expecting a soft landing, hitting the remains of the wall and making a large dent. Looking at the guy, Poseidon ordered the demon to stop being so arrogant and surrender immediately. However, at that moment, the guy seemed to be enveloped by a golden energy that gave away after a giant golden figure behind him. Poseidon abruptly focused his attention on him. He inquired about who had appeared in front of him. He also complained that for some reason he felt that the odor coming from the guy was rather familiar and disgusting at the same time. A giant figure behind the guy materialized, informing him that her name was Neja and that today she would kill the monster in front of her. Wang Zifan was surprised, but at the same time glad that the guy had made it in time. Chang Huchen warily watched the fight, for all hope and all bets were placed on Ying Che. At headquarters they were surprised, as Neja belonged to the Oriental gods. For Poseidon, the appearance of the Eastern god was as much of a surprise as it was for the commander-in-chief and the others in the command headquarters. He thought they were all dead, but he didn't expect Neja to be the only survivor. The guy's body was enveloped in flames, and he got into a fighting stance, and after that, Neza commanded to start the death trial. At this point, it was no longer a low-level god who appeared before mankind, but a full-fledged sea god, Poseidon. How can they get rid of him? And that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you would like to see a sequel, please like, subscribe to the channel, and leave your wishes in the comments. You can also subscribe to Telegram to know about new videos. Bye everybody.